Chapter 491. Tianyang directly sat down cross-legged to cultivate. However, the surrounding spectators were all dumbfounded. In the next moment, a portion of them were dumbfounded and became furious. This person, he thinks too highly of himself. So many of us are waiting for him here, and he still dares to cultivate? Elder Ku Shan snorted angrily. His third-level sea of soul, realm Zhen Yuan, surged rapidly, faintly transforming into a human figure. This human figure also charged directly at Tianyang. If this move was successful, Tianyang, who had entered a state of cultivation, would definitely be seriously injured. Seeing this scene, everyone's expression changed. There were even some whose expressions did not change, remaining indifferent. There were so many almighty sea of soul realm experts gathered here, not just to watch a kid break the limit. What they were most concerned about was the things that this kid could possibly obtain after touching the sword star from beyond the heavens. In the end, Heavenly Sun sat down cross-legged to cultivate without saying a single word. Naturally, they were infuriated beyond belief. Attack directly in my territory. Pay attention, this is not your Gold Star City. At this moment, the strongest person present, the Sword Star City Lord, reached out his hand and directly exploded the human figure. He coldly looked at Elder Ku Shan and said, Elder Ku Shan, surnamed Han, was a member of the City Lord's mansion of Gold Star City. Although he was not usually in Gold Star City, he naturally could not sit idly by when a junior was bullied right under his nose. After recognizing Tianyang, he killed him with lightning speed. If not for the Sword Star City Lord stopping him in time, Tianyang would probably have died. Seeing the Sword Star City Lord's unfriendly expression, Elder Ku Shan snorted coldly, but also retreated. He naturally understood the Sword Star City Lord's intention. This was the Sword Star City Lord's territory. He had already offended the Sword Star City Lord by attacking earlier. If he attacked again, the Sword Star City Lord would not give him any face and directly suppress him. After all, the Sword Star City Lord was a spirit king existence, and he was only at the third level of Sea of Soul Realm. The Sword Star City Lord could completely devour him. However, facing so many people, it's too unreasonable for this kid to cultivate directly. At this moment, a woman at the fourth level of Sea of Soul Realm said. She glanced at Tianyang indifferently, as if she was looking at an item. Hearing this, everyone nodded their heads. They had gathered here for the treasures of the Sword Star beyond the heavens. Now, as the only person who might have clues, he was actually only at the third level of the Tao Fire Realm and had even ignored them. How could they, who had always been arrogant, endure this? Ling Yuhan looked at the many mighty figures in the sky with an unwilling expression and bitter lips. If it wasn't for the fact that he was too weak, how could his master be manipulated like this? The reason why these people did not make a move was because with the Sword Star City Master here, they did not dare to act rashly. This is my Sword Star City. The place he is at is the cultivation area around the outer heavenly sword. The City Lord Mansion has no control over when he starts to cultivate or when he leaves. Neither can you. The Sword Star City Master said coldly. His resolute face, which seemed to have been cut by a knife, was filled with calmness. No matter how many Sea of Soul Realm cultivators gathered in front of him, as long as none of them had reached his level, then they were all ants. Hearing this, everyone's expressions changed as they looked at Tianyang in surprise. They wanted to know where Tianyang came from. One had to know that the Sword Star City Master had always been aloof from worldly affairs. This time, if it wasn't for the fact that he was in the Sword Star City and beside the outer heavenly sword, the Sword Star City Master would not have made a move. In the end, not only did the Sword Star City Master make a move, he even protected an extremely unfamiliar young man. What the hell was going on? Could it be that this young man was from some ancient family or a genius disciple of a hidden martial arts holy land? He can cultivate however long he wants. This is the iron law of Sword Star City. If you want to shake it, ask my sword first. The Sword Star City Master said indifferently. In the next moment, a cold light flashed in his hand, and an extremely sharp long sword appeared in his hand. Seeing this, everyone's expressions changed drastically. They looked at the long sword with fear and retreated countless steps as they spoke with shock. Soaring Heaven Sword? You actually took out the Soaring Heaven Sword? Everyone was shocked as they looked at this scene with incomparable horror. As a 7th level C of Soul Realm cultivator, the Sword Star City Master rarely made a move. Even if he made a move, he rarely used his true strength. However, without even saying a few words, the Sword Star City Master directly took out his Soaring Heaven Sword. That was a treasure sword that was close to a high-grade spirit weapon. Once the Soaring Heaven Sword made a move, even though this group of C of Soul Realm cultivators looked powerful, 70 to 80% of them would not be able to block a single sword strike from the Soaring Heaven Sword. This was the existence of a 7th level C of Soul Realm expert. One man with one sword was enough to suppress a group of heroes. You. Elder Kushan's face was extremely gloomy. He had always been arrogant. When had he ever been suppressed like this? However, when the Sword Star City Master's cold gaze looked over, he immediately cowered by 80%. No matter how arrogant he was only at the 3rd level of C of Soul Realm. The Sword Star City Master probably wouldn't even need to use many swords to deal with him. If you can't wait, please return. If you can, please return. The Sword Star City Master said indifferently. Hearing this, everyone's expressions became much uglier. At this moment, a ray of light suddenly flashed across the Sword Star City Master's resolute middle-aged face. The entire Sword Star City began to tremble slightly. An extremely terrifying wave directly swept through the entire Sword Star City. City Protection Great Array. Feeling this powerful wave, everyone's expressions changed drastically as they looked deeply at the Sword Star City Master. You win. Subsequently, these people circulated their true essence and exploded with terrifying speed, leaving Sword Star City far away. There was nothing they could do. The Sword Star City Master had even activated the City Protection Great Array. In addition to his incomparably tyrannical battle strength, if he really wanted to make a move, then, even if he left all of them behind, there wouldn't be a problem. Streams of light flashed between heaven and earth, and the sea of Soul Realm experts surrounding the Sword Star all left one after another. Seeing this, the Sword Star City Master nodded slightly. The fluctuations of the City Protection Great Array dissipated, but the Soaring Heaven Sword was still in his hand. The Sword Star City Master looked at the Soaring Heaven Sword in his hand, and then looked at the tall Sword Star. In the end, his gaze that wandered between the Sword Star and the Soaring Heaven Sword stopped on Tianyang's body. A complicated expression flashed across his face, and then he became determined. Boom! At this moment, a terrifying loud sound came from Tianyang's body. Waves of energy ripples were released from Tianyang's body, instantly waking up countless people around the Sword Star. This is breakthrough. This young man is actually only at the 3rd level of the Dao Fire Realm. Now, he's going to break through to the peak of the 3rd level of the Dao Fire Realm. Everyone was incomparably shocked, but Ling Yuhan's eyes lit up as she waved her small fist. Master has broken through. He will definitely be able to smash that rotten old man. At this moment, the divine desolate heavenly spirit art circulated at an extremely fast speed. Drops of Sky Origin True Essence were condensed, and then they were directly added to the original 108 drops of Sky Origin True Essence. Tianyang's aura instantly soared by countless times, and a sharp sword intent that seemed as if it could tear apart the heavens also bloomed. 3rd level of the Dao Fire Realm, peak. At this moment, the Sword Star City Master also arrived above Tianyang. Looking at the smiling Tianyang, he slowly said, Chapter 492. You are. Tianyang looked at the burly man in front of him, and his expression changed slightly as he asked. With his soul power, he could naturally see that the person in front of him had an extraordinary cultivation. However, even if the person's cultivation was extraordinary, what did it have to do with him? Could it be that he thought that he had encountered the Sword Star and obtained some treasure and was here to rob him? Thinking of this, Tianyang's expression froze slightly. In his soul sea, the 10,000 swords returned to origin that he had just obtained was trembling slightly. If there were any accidents, Tianyang would not hesitate to kill his way out. I'm the governor of Sword Star City, Tai Wuji. Greetings, young lord. However, before Tianyang could finish his sentence, the governor of Sword Star City suddenly knelt down on one knee and shouted loudly. Hearing this, the two middle-aged men were stunned. Ling Yuhan was stunned. The surrounding people were dumbfounded. Even Tianyang himself was dumbfounded. Young lord? What the hell? Wasn't the only one who called him young lord the Flying Sword? Flying Sword was still his big senior in the 10th Hall and did not have any relatives with the surname Tai. What was the background of the governor of Sword Star City, Tai Wuji? Even if he was his underling in his previous life, it was impossible. In his previous life, he was alone. Where did his underling come from? Young lord, there are too many people here. It's not a good place to talk. Let's talk somewhere else. The governor of Sword Star City looked at the surrounding people, and his face darkened slightly as he said. Tianyang nodded slightly when he heard this. Although he still did not understand what was going on, he had come to a realization. The 10,000 swords returned to origin in his soul. C was ready to be unleashed. Even if it could not injure the governor of Sword Star City, it could still escape. Yuhan, cultivate well here. The opportunities here are very strong. You might be able to break through to the peak of the second heaven of Dao Fire Realm. Before leaving, Tianyang transmitted his voice to Ling Yuhan. Hearing this, Ling Yuhan nodded. Then, she watched as the governor of Sword Star City and Tianyang walked out of the Sword Star and headed towards the governor's mansion. In the governor's mansion, it was a clean and tidy room, but it was not luxurious. Tianyang and Tai Wuji sat opposite each other, looking at each other. After a long while, Tai Wuji finally spoke. Young master, do you know the real name of the Sword Star? Hearing this, Tianyang was slightly taken aback. Then, he realized that Tai Wuji was trying to verify his identity. Shun Tian Wuzuan, all heaven's sword. Tianyang said softly. Hearing this, Tai Wuji's eyes brightened. He immediately stood up and knelt on one knee. He said respectfully, Greetings, young master. Tianyang, on the other hand, seemed to have understood something. He looked at the Ling Xiao sword that Tai Wuji had set aside and said indifferently, If I'm not wrong, your rise must have something to do with the All Heavens sword. Hearing this, Tai Wuji revealed a shocked expression. How did you know, young master? That's right, young master is so resourceful that he naturally knows everything. However, let me explain the details, Tai Wuji said. Tai Wuji said. Then Tianyang also listened carefully. The secrets of a 7th level C of Soul Realm Spirit King were not so easy to hear. In fact, Sword Star City was originally just an ordinary city. Even if it had a miraculous item like the Sword Star, it was not famous because of the original City Lord's mansion's self-preservation. However, one day, Tai Wuji coincidentally entered the 300 jong radius of the All Heavens Sword. The entire Sword Star City changed. Tai Wuji was originally just a rogue cultivator with slightly better talent. Back then, he was only at the peak of the 3rd level of the Dao Fire Realm. However, because he was the first to reach such a distance, the All Heaven Sword directly transmitted Shuntian Wuzuan's voice to him. Of course, it was different from Tianyang's kind of direct contact. Because the distance was still far, although the All Heaven Sword gave Tai Wuji an opportunity, it was not great. However, it also directly created the famous Spirit King of this generation in the east of the Central Region, the Sword Star City Lord. A sword manual, a quasi-heaven tier cultivation method, and a copy of the All Heaven Sword, the Soaring Heaven Sword. These two added together are more than enough for me to use until the Heaven Ascension realm. It's a pity that my talent is still a bit lacking. I'm too slow. Now, I'm only at the 7th level of the Sea of Soul Realm. The Heaven Ascension realm is still far away. Tai Wuji sighed. As for Tianyang, he looked at the Soaring Heaven Sword, which was somewhat similar to the All Heaven Sword, and his fingers moved rhythmically. The enormous energy hidden within his body immediately fluctuated. Without the slightest bit of Zhen Yuan, the soaring heaven sword directly soared into the sky. Tai Wuji looked at this scene in shock. The soaring heaven sword had been with him for several hundred years, and it had never been obtained by others. Ordinary people would find it extremely difficult to even approach it. However, Tianyang did not even stretch out his hand, and directly made the soaring heaven sword soar into the sky. If he wanted to, he might even be able to obtain it directly. How could this not shock Tai Wuji? As expected, to be able to obtain the approval of Lord Xintian Wuzuan, he's definitely a peerless genius of this generation. Although that Nie Fengyun is strong, he's still far from being comparable to Young Master. The Sword Star City Lord stood up excitedly, his eyes revealing a fiery expression. Because of the All-Heaven Sword, Tai Wuji's opinion of Xintian Wuzuan had almost reached the level of worship. Seeing that Tianyang was actually so strong, his dissatisfaction immediately disappeared. Their feelings of dissatisfaction due to the arrival of a young master from the heavens instantly vanished. Their attitude towards Tianyang had almost surpassed admiration and reached the level of respect. Since we're both people who have accepted the mission, there's no harm in you calling me young master. Tianyang smiled faintly. 7th level C of Soul, Realm Spirit King? Such an existence was indeed extremely powerful in today's eyes. However, 10,000 years ago, such a person in front of a peak heaven ascension realm, Sword Emperor, barely enough to do odd jobs. Therefore, Tianyang didn't care too much. However, this indifferent attitude caused Tai Wuji to misunderstand. The young master, whose talent was originally shocking, had an additional label of being calm in the face of danger, a strong mental state, and so on. However, with your strength, it's still a bit shocking to call me young master in front of others. Call me whatever you want in daily life. Tianyang waved his hand and said. He didn't have any intention of relying on Sword Star City's forces and didn't have any requirements for this cheap little brother. However, when these words entered Tai Wuji's ears, his expression immediately changed. How can this be? Young master is young master. If I dare to treat you as a junior or a peer, then I'll just stab myself to death with the soaring heaven sword. Tai Wuji said firmly. Even Heavenly Sun couldn't help but blush with shame when he saw his resolute expression. This person, how about this? Call me young Master Tian. That's better. All right, young Master Tian. That old man Ku Shan tried to deal with you, but was stopped by this subordinate. He shouldn't be far now. Do you want a cold light flashed in Tai Wuji's eyes, and his hand made a throat-slitting gesture. That old man Ku Shan is from Golden Star City's City Lore Mansion. If we don't deal with him in time, Golden Star City's City Lore Mansion? Surnamed Han? Tianyang suddenly said. That's right, Tai Wuji said. A cold glint flashed across Tianyang's eyes when he heard this. The corners of his mouth curled into a faintly discernible curve as he chuckled. No matter whether it's revenge or face-slapping, it's better to do it personally. Chapter 493. In the City Lord's Mansion, Tianyang and Ling Wuji stayed there because of the Sword Star City Lord's warm invitation. However, Tianyang respected Tianyang's decision. Although Tai Wuji sincerely wanted to acknowledge Tianyang as the young lord, Tianyang could not let the Sword Star City Lord lose face. Therefore, no matter how Ling Yuhan asked, Tianyang did not mention it. After all, it was not a big deal. Young Master Tian, the location of the Great Void Mystic Realm has started to fluctuate. At this moment, Tai Wuji walked into Tianyang's house and looked at Tianyang, who was cultivating. Hearing that, Tianyang's expression changed slightly. Finally, there was news about the Great Void Mystic Realm. As a mystic realm, the Great Void Mystic Realm required a token to enter. However, the opening time of the Great Void Mystic Realm was not very certain. The various major factions, even the first-rate factions like the Sun Moon Sect, could only control the general timing at most. The specific timing was still unknown. Fluctuations. Is it about to open? Tianyang said. Hearing that, Tai Wuji nodded and said with a face full of admiration, "That's right. Since it has started to fluctuate, the great void mystic realm will open soon. Young Master Tian, a genius with unparalleled talent and outstanding combat power like yours will definitely be able to defeat countless geniuses and obtain the top position," Tai Wuji said with a smile. If outsiders saw this, they would definitely be extremely shocked. In the east of the central region, Tai Wuji, the Sword Star City Lord, who was quite famous in the central region, was actually so respectful to a young man. If news of this spread, it would probably make countless people's jaws drop. However, Tai Wuji himself did not care too much. If he had a little resistance at the beginning, after these few days of interaction, Tai Wuji only had endless admiration for Tianyang. In terms of talent, Tianyang was still a few months away from 17 years old. However, he was already a peak 3rd Heaven Dao Fire Realm powerhouse. In terms of strength, Tai Wuji had also heard of Tianyang's actions at the Genius Gathering. He had challenged countless geniuses from aristocratic families and was invincible. Even Tai Wuji, who was at the peak of the 3rd level of the Dao Fire Realm, would find it hard to match up to such strength. If Tianyang had been born in a martial Dao sacred land, Tai Wuji might not have been so surprised. However, Tianyang was only from the northernmost part of the continent, the northern wilderness region, which was barren of spiritual qi. He was born in such a desolate place, yet he had such outstanding achievements. If he was born in the holy land of martial Dao, then wouldn't he have directly hammered a sea of spirit realm expert? Tai Wuji wasn't very clear about Tianyang's background and hadn't investigated it. Otherwise, he would have been even more surprised if he had known about Tianyang's glorious achievements in Sky Blue College. Yesterday, the only area in which Tai Wuji was confident that he could surpass Tianyang was directly destroyed after Tianyang stabilized his cultivation. He didn't go to the All Heavens sword to comprehend it. To Tianyang, Shun Tian Wuzuan's sword Dao true meaning was at most a support. His own sword Dao was created by himself. All Heaven's sword was at most a reference. Yesterday, Tianyang's sword Dao cultivation had improved, so he went to find Tai Wuji. Tai Wuji gladly agreed, but he didn't expect that in the next few minutes his confidence would crumble so much. Both of them sealed their cultivation and held an ordinary steel sword in their hands. Tianyang and Tai Wuji started to spar in the city lord's residence. Ever since his trip to the All Heaven sword, Tianyang could reach the 9th level of the Sword Pagoda even if he didn't open his sealed soul power. In other words, he was comparable to him at the Sea of Soul Realm. If the Sword Pagoda steel hadn't limited him to the primordial transformation realm, his terrifying battle record of clearing the Sword Pagoda at the age of 16 would definitely cause an uproar in the entire firmament territory. As for Tai Wuji, he had also immersed himself in Sword Dao for many years. His Sword Dao cultivation was also very profound. In the beginning, the two of them were still able to spar with each other. Just as Tai Wuji was amazed by Tianyang's terrifying talent in Sword Dao, Tianyang directly exploded. Ding, 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 ding. Tianyang displayed sword techniques that were like a violent storm. It was as if the sword in his hand wasn't an ordinary steel sword, but the legendary Supreme Grade Sky Sword. Every slash of the sword was executed without any fancy moves, but Tai Wuji was still exhausted from dealing with it. The more he fought, the more shocked Tai Wuji became. In the end, this shock had turned into complete and utter astonishment. In just a few minutes, Tai Wuji was defeated. If Tai Wuji hadn't released his true origin at the end, he would have been defeated by Tianyang. Even so, Tai Wuji was defeated. His confidence instantly collapsed. At this moment, Tai Wuji's thoughts and feelings were probably the same as those of the two middle-aged men beside the All Heaven sword. They couldn't wait to wash their faces with tears. First place. Hearing this, Tianyang nodded slightly, but didn't pay much attention to it. We can fight for it. However, I'm not sure about the rules of the Great Void Mystery Land. Tianyang said. The rules were the most important. If Tai Wuji didn't even know the rules, how could he fight for first place? The rules of the Great Void Mystery Land are very simple. There are all kinds of brutal, fierce beasts in the Great Void Mystery Land. Legend has it that when the Great Void Emperor suppressed the demon tribe, the demonic chi was produced. These half-demonized demonic beasts are called fierce beasts. When the time comes, a token will be created to record the number of fierce beasts killed. Tai Wuji said. Hearing this, the corners of Tianyang's mouth curled up. Then, can this token be snatched? That's right. Tai Wuji smiled. The Great Void Mystery Land not only tests one's ability to kill fierce beasts, but it also tests one's ability to control one's heart and protect one's self. If one is not careful, even a prodigy from a martial holy land may die. If one is lucky, an ordinary youth from an ordinary background may be able to pick up countless tokens left behind by others. Luck, strength, calculation, planning, and the heart of a person are all tested in the Great Void Mystery Land. Tai Wuji said. Hearing this, Tianyang smiled slightly. The difference between the Great Void Mystery Land and the training ground was not that big. However, in the Great Void Mystery Land, one could still obtain points from other places. However, in the training ground, one could only kill others. The Great Void Mystery Land is also the time for the various martial holy lands to select disciples. Last time, Nie Fengyun entered the martial holy land through the Great Void Mystery Land. Being able to join a powerful force to cultivate is the reason why the Great Void Mystery Land is so famous. Hearing this, Tianyang nodded slightly. If one was from an ordinary background and entered a martial holy land, it could be said that one had reached the heavens in one step. However, there is still some time before the Great Void Mystery Land opens. There will be a grand auction soon. Young Master Tian, why don't we go and join in the fun? Chapter 494. Sword Star City, in an open-air but extremely spacious auction. Tianyang, Tai Wuji, and Ling Yuhan sat in a quiet private room, watching the scene below. It was clear that this auction was held for the Great Void Mystery Realm. After all, the auras of those below the spiritual sea realm had already revealed their identities. However, what surprised Tianyang was that in another private room, he actually saw Han Tianpeng from the Golden Star City's City Lord Mansion, who had been instantly defeated by him. Beside him sat a tall and cold man. He held a long spear in his hand and had an unruly expression on his face. If this Tianyang is really as you say, then he really doesn't put my Golden Star City's City Lord Mansion and me, Han Tianxiong, in his eyes at all. The unruly man said coldly. Hearing this, Han Tianpeng nodded. Second brother, this Tianyang has indeed gone too far. Back then, I only said a few words to him, and he directly attacked me, beating me to this state. I almost couldn't even enter the Great Void Realm. Wait until we enter the Great Void Realm. Then you have to avenge me, Han Tianpeng said angrily. Hearing this, Han Tianxiong nodded. Although he knew that his brother liked to exaggerate, he didn't care at all. This was because this Tianyang had indeed attacked. As long as he attacked, he would die without a doubt. Since he dared to offend the Golden Star City's City Lord Mansion and didn't put Han Tianxiong in his eyes, Han Tianxiong naturally wanted to kill him. Of course. However, this Great Void Auction seems to be different from the past. This time, some kind of treasure seems to have appeared. It's a high-grade spirit artifact, the sky-shattering flame armor. That's a treasure that only Sea of Soul Realm experts can obtain. We can't snatch it. Han Tianpeng shook his head. Hearing this, Han Tianxiong sneered and touched his spatial bag. That might not be the case. At this time, in the other private rooms, at the gathering of geniuses, countless geniuses from aristocratic families who had been taught a lesson by Tianyang began to angrily denounce him. This Tianyang, they had gone too far. We've already given in, but he's still chasing after us. My face was almost destroyed. My unparalleled beauty was almost destroyed. Big brother, you have to avenge me. In one of the private rooms, a beautiful woman said to the boorish man in front of her. She was so beautiful that even the moon and flowers would be put to shame. Hearing this, the rough-looking man's face twitched slightly. He looked at his sister, who was heavier than him by 2 times and had so much fat on her face that it was almost impossible to tell her original appearance. This person's skin was really thick in all senses of the word. However, a cold glint flashed across the rough man's eyes. In that case, this Tianyong must die. It just so happens that I have comprehended a tyrannical saber technique in the sect. At that time, killing that trash at the 3rd level of the Tao Fire Realm will be easy, the boorish man said. Similar scenes also appeared in the various private rooms and seats. Some people called their relatives and friends, some hid their hidden weapons, some hired assassins, and some directly invited a peak half-step C of Soul Realm expert who could fight against a 1st-level C of Soul Realm expert. A few days ago, Tianyong did not care about the other party's identity and directly beat them up. He had attracted a lot of hatred. If others knew about this, they would definitely be scared to the point that their legs would go soft. After all, those people were all extremely powerful aristocratic families. However, Tianyong did not care. Back then, he had dared to kill Wang Lang in the Wang family's home court. Now that both sides were fighting in the away court, who was afraid of who? It's starting. At this time, Tai Wuji reminded. Tianyong also retracted his soul power and looked at the huge auction stage. Welcome to the Great Void Auction, all geniuses. This Great Void Auction is completely different from the previous ones. This time, not only are there all kinds of treasures, but there are also many mysterious treasures that even the Great Void Auction itself can't recognize. There is even the legendary high-grade spirit artifact, the sky-breaking flame armor. The host shouted with all his might. Hearing this, Tai Wuji sneered. Mysterious treasures? It's just a pile of scrap metal. Even the Great Void Auction house can't recognize it, so they put up for sale. This Great Void Auction is indeed different from the rest. There are all kinds of people mixed in. Hearing this, Ling Yuhan looked over curiously. City Lord Tai, you seem to be very familiar with this? I have a list that is much more detailed than a normal person's. Naturally, I know the details of these things. There are only a few that might be mysterious treasures. The rest are just a pile of trash, Tai Wuji said. Tai Wuji said. Then his interspatial bag moved and a thick book appeared in his hand. This is it. Tai Wuji handed it to Tianyong. Tianyong took it and glanced over it. He was speechless. It was indeed different to have someone backing him. Others who participated in this auction were all nervous, competing with their eyes, strength, and wealth. But now, Tai Wuji had directly handed over a book. What was the point of competing with their eyes? It was clear at a glance what these things were. Thank you, City Lord Tai. Tianyong chuckled and didn't return it to Tai Wuji. If he didn't make use of his backer, wouldn't he be a fool? At this time, 5 items had already been auctioned off in the auction. 2 of them looked like treasures on the outside, but were actually worthless trash. This Great Void Auction was indeed a mixed bag of good and bad people. However, the participants were also a mixed bag of good and bad people. There were many nouveau riches who had money but no discernment. It was no wonder this auction could continue for so many years. Now it's time for the peak middle grade spirit artifact, the Sword Soul Battle Armor. At this time, a shout sounded out. Tianyong's expression changed slightly as he looked at the auction stage. Under the sunlight, the Sword Soul Battle Armor looked dazzling. Tianyong checked it with his soul power and immediately understood everything. This Sword Soul Battle Armor was actually a real thing. The Sword Soul Battle Armor is made of high-grade metals. It was refined beside the Sword Star for many years before it was forged. It absorbed the powerful sword intent of the Sword Tao from the Sword Star and is of great help to sword cultivators. It's a peak middle grade spirit artifact, which also shows how powerful it is. The auctioneer said loudly. Hearing this, the entire auction house was shocked. Countless eyes looked at the Sword Soul Battle Armor. It could actually help sword cultivators? If that was the case, then it was a must-win. The starting price is 500,000 high-grade spirit stones. Each bid must be at least 10,000 high-grade spirit stones. The auctioneer said. Hearing this, the crowd felt as if a bucket of cold water had been poured over them from head to toe. 500,000 high-grade spirit stones was equivalent to 5 billion low-grade spirit stones. Every time the price was raised, it was 100 million low-grade spiritual stones. This was too terrifying. However, at this time, a blazing light flashed in Han Tianping's eyes. He shouted, 600,000 high-grade spirit stones. 650,000. 680,000. This sword soul battle armor can not only increase the strength of sword cultivators, but it also has great defensive power. It is worth 700,000. The competition for the sword soul battle armor was more intense than Han Tianping had expected. Although the starting price had dissuaded many people, there were still many who wanted to compete with him. Han Tianping was anxious. He stood up and shouted, 800,000. At this time, Tianyang looked at the sword soul battle armor and then looked at Han Tianping. He chuckled. 1 million. Tianyang smiled faintly. Hearing this, the entire auction house was dead silent. 1 million. That was equivalent to 10 billion low-grade spirit stones. Such a sky-high price was too terrifying. At this time, Tianyang stood up and walked to the balcony. He looked at Han Tianping and chuckled. I'm not targeting you. I mean everyone here. Chapter 495. I'm not targeting you. What I'm saying is that everyone here is poor. When Tianyang said that, the entire auction house went from dead silence to an uproar. It was even more heated than when the sword spirit battle armor had appeared. Bastard, what's so great about 10 billion low-grade spirit stones? How dare you mock me like that? Do you really think I can't afford it? It seems like you really can't afford it. F***CKU. Who asked you to tell the truth? I'm messing with that guy who came out of nowhere. Damn, are you scolding me directly? Shall we go out and practice later? After being provoked by Tianyang's words, the entire Great Void auction house was in an uproar. Countless people glared angrily at Tianyang. Even the sage-like elders were the same. This kid is too much. You have to know that there's always someone better than you. Sword Star City is filled with hidden talents. How can they not afford a mere 10 billion low-grade spirit stones? Arrogant, conceited, and condescending. Kid, don't let me see you in the Great Void Mystic Realm. Otherwise, you'll definitely die a horrible death. Countless people shouted angrily and looked at Tianyang with murderous eyes. However, Tianyang remained calm as he listened to the angry scolding coming from all directions. Occasionally, he would reply with a few words. All right, I'll wait. However, the content of his reply made the crowd even more furious. Tai Wuji was also stunned at this moment. What was going on? Young Master Tian's mouth was quite good. With a group taunt, he had stirred up the rhythm of countless people. However, it was the rhythm of hatred towards him. Tianyang's taunt, was he not afraid that everyone would gang up on him in the Great Void Mystic Realm? I got it. At this moment, Ling Yuhan clapped her hands and said excitedly, Master is attracting hatred. What? Hearing this, Tai Wuji was dumbfounded. Attracting hatred? These people were not ordinary. Most of them came from aristocratic families and were extremely powerful. Why would Tianyang attract their hatred? At this time, Ling Yuhan added, Master is a very upright person. If I don't offend him, he won't offend others. Once in the Great Void Mystic Realm, he might not try to snatch it. However, it would be much more convenient if we get aggro now. That group of people will definitely attack Master. When that time comes, Master will kill them one by one. Wouldn't that be great? Ling Yuhan smiled. Hearing this, black lines appeared on Tai Wuji's face. To think that Tianyang could come up with such a plan, wasn't he afraid that he wouldn't even be able to keep his life if a large group of people surrounded him? Then, Tai Wuji slapped himself on the head. Those who were truly powerful wouldn't attack, just because of a simple sentence. How could those who weren't powerful enough be a match for Tianyang, even if they joined forces? Tianyang's move not only drew aggro, but also gained points, putting himself in an invincible position. It was simply wonderful. Also, I was very unhappy with this Big Bird Han. So Master helped me vent my anger. If it didn't do that, how could Big Bird Han attack? 1 million superior grade spirit stones isn't a small sum. Ling Yuhan waved his fist and said with a smile. Hearing this, Tai Wuji only felt waves of coldness coming from his body. Looking at Tianyang's harmless smile, Tai Wuji even felt that the young man in front of him, who was not even 17 years old, was actually an old monster who had lived for 10,000 years. Even though he had been famous for a long time and had seen countless people, he couldn't compare to this ability to control people's hearts. Humph. Do you really think that your wealth is invincible? 1,050,000 superior grade spirit stones. At this time, Han Tianpeng finally couldn't take it anymore and snorted coldly. Hearing this, Tianyang raised an eyebrow, and the corners of his mouth curled up slightly. The fish had taken the bait. 1,100,000 superior grade spirit stones. To tell you the truth, with my spirit stones, I can even build a golden star city governor's mansion. How can this young master of the city governor's mansion, who doesn't even have the slightest bit of strength, be better than me? Tianyang chuckled and once again displayed the Tianji Sword Emperor's acting skills. He directly acted out the image of an arrogant rich kid. With a slight adjustment of the expression on his face, Tianyang's face instantly changed from an ordinary young man to an arrogant young master who didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. It has to be said that Tianyang had acted out this image many times. Tianyang himself was a little tired of it, but he couldn't stand the ridicule of this image. How dare you humiliate my golden star city governor's mansion? Tianyang, how dare you? Han Tianxiong's face was cold as he looked at the arrogant Tianyang and said coldly, "Do you really think that you are invincible? 1,150,000 superior grade spirit stones." Hiss! Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air and looked at Han Tianxiong and Han Tianpeng in disbelief. 1,150,000 superior grade spirit stones was equivalent to 11.5 billion inferior grade spirit stones. If this kind of wealth was placed in other places, it was possible to nurture a first-rate force in a big city. If it was used on a talented cultivator, it might be possible to create a half-step sea of Soul Realm Expert, or even a sea of Soul Realm Expert. In the end, it was used on a peak middle-grade spirit weapon in this auction. The auctioneer was grinning from ear to ear and couldn't say a word. If it was sold, just the 1,150,000 superior grade spirit stones would be 1% of it. That was 1,150,000 superior grade spirit stones. Similarly, it was more than 100 million inferior grade spirit stones. One auction item had brought him such a huge amount of wealth. It would be strange if the auctioneer wasn't excited. 1,150,000, and you want to suppress me? Hearing this, Tianyang's expression changed to one of panic and arrogance. He then shouted, 1,200,000 superior grade spirit stones. Seeing this, Tai Wuji and Ling Yuhan were speechless. Masters, young Master Tian's acting skills were comparable to a best actor. In the other box, Han Tianxiong and Han Tianpeng noticed the change in Tianyang's expression and sneered. I'm afraid he's at his limit. How dare he mock our Golden Star City Governor's mansion? I'll let him know what it means to be a real tycoon. 1,250,000 superior grade spirit stones. 1,300,000 superior grade spirit stones. 1,350,000 superior grade spirit stones. 1,450,000 superior grade spirit stones. The two of them continued to exchange blows. In the end, Tianyang was practically shouting himself hoarse. Seeing this, Han Tianxiong's face lit up with joy. Han Tianpeng was even faster, shouting loudly, "Stop! 1,500,000 superior grade spirit stones." Instantly, everyone in the Great Void Auction was shocked. The Sword Soul armor was worth at most 700,000 to 800,000 superior grade spirit stones. In the end, the two of them had reached twice the price. If not for the fact that they still had the superior grade spiritual artifact, the sky-breaking flame armor, the highest price in the auction would have been between the two of them. When Tianyang saw this, he chuckled. He could tell that this was their limit. Then, he put on a pitiful look. Sigh, I still couldn't win against the two young heroes. Hearing this, Han Tianxiong laughed loudly. Han Tianpeng was also very pleased with himself. In the next moment, Tianyang's expression changed. He was overflowing with enthusiasm and excitement. Congratulations, congratulations. This middle spiritual artifact, the Sword Soul Armor, is yours. 1,500,000 superior grade spirit stones. This price is terrifying. Tianyang smiled. Hearing this, Han Tianxiong and Han Tianpeng were stunned. Then, they looked at Tianyang's bright smile, and their hearts trembled. Then, they looked at the Sword Soul Armor. Han Tianxiong's voice was hoarse. Then, Han Tianxiong spat out a mouthful of blood. Unable to withstand the huge blow, he vomited blood and fainted. As for Han Tianpeng, his face was as white as a sheet. For this fight, they had used up all the wealth they had at their disposal. These were the spirit stones that would allow them to break through in the great void realm. Tianyang chuckled, flicked his sleeves, turned around, and walked into the private room, brushed his sleeves and left. Hid his achievements and fame. P.S. 33 test papers, 5 copybooks, 10 plus memorization papers, 2 essays. The school's actions made my scalp tingle. Let's see if I can update 4 times today. Chapter 496. In the end, the two brothers, Han Tianpeng and Han Tianxiong, had no choice but to grit their teeth and pay the 1,500,000 spirit stones. The Great Void Auction wasn't an ordinary organization. The power behind it was so great that even the City Lord Palace of Gold Star City didn't dare offend it lightly. If they offended the Great Void Auction House, it would be extremely easy for the Great Void Auction House to kill them in the eastern part of its central region. However, after paying 1,500,000 high-grade spirit stones, they no longer had any energy left to compete for other items. Thus, they could only leave resentfully. However, their hatred for Tianyang had reached its peak. They wanted nothing more than to eat Tianyang alive. Tianyang naturally didn't care about this. After all, why would a giant care about the hatred of an ant? In Tianyang's opinion, these two were just point-giving machines in the future. In terms of combat power, these two were really no different from ants in front of Tianyang. Young Master Tian, I have been unhappy with Gold Star City for a long time. Especially after Han Tianxiong joined the Mountain River sect. He became even more domineering and lawless. Young Master Tian, just a few words from you have caused these two to die. I admire you. Tai Wuji stepped forward and spoke in admiration when he saw Tianyang's calm expression. Tianyang chuckled softly. These two were stupid to begin with. My provocation didn't have much effect on them. Tai Wuji naturally didn't feel the same way. How could anyone who could become a disciple of the Mountain River sect be stupid? Tianyang was obviously being humble. However, Tai Wuji had no intention of retorting. Watching his own opponents suffer was a very satisfying feeling. Let's wait and see. Oh right, City Lord Tai, are you interested in obtaining the sky-breaking flame armor? Tianyang chuckled softly. Tai Wuji shook his head when he heard this. Forget it. Although the sky-breaking flame armor is a high-grade spirit weapon, it will be extremely difficult for it to recognize an owner. I don't specialize in fire-based cultivation. Even if I obtain the sky-breaking flame armor, I won't be able to recognize an owner. What if I buy a pile of scrap metal? If it really is a high-grade spirit weapon, it would have been sent to the central region to be auctioned. There are definitely more Marshall Way powerhouses there than here, Tai Wuji said. Tai Wuji said. Hearing this, Tianyang immediately understood. So the items auctioned by the Great Void Auction were all defective goods. Although they weren't defective items, the auction here definitely wasn't as grand as the one at the Central Region. At the thought of this, Tianyang's heart skipped a beat. The auction in Sword Star City was already so spectacular. How many treasures would there be in the Central Region's Central Region? However, the other items in the Great Void Auction are also pretty good. If young Master Tian has the time, you can continue looking around. Tai Wuji smiled. Tianyang nodded. With such a cheap underling, it was indeed much more convenient to do things in Sword Star City. At the very least, the two people with the surname Han would definitely not dare to attack him in Sword Star City. Otherwise, once Tai Wuji attacked, Golden Star City would be destroyed. After the sky-high price of 1.5 million high-grade spirit stones, The crowd's mood didn't seem to have completely calmed down. Some treasures that were only worth a few hundred or a few thousand high-grade spirit stones were auctioned off for tens of thousands of high-grade spirit stones. There were even some who spent 10,000 upper-grade spirit stones to buy a so-called lower-grade spirit weapon that only had a superficial appearance. The craftsmanship of this low-grade spirit weapon was really bad. That person had only used his inner yuan to test it, and it had directly deformed. At this level, it was at most a low-grade treasure weapon. How could it be a low-grade spirit weapon? However, this item was auctioned off by the Great Void Auction under the name of mysterious treasure that can't be identified. Although that person had discovered it immediately, he could only grit his teeth and swallow it. It wasn't only because of the Great Void Auction's power, but also because the auction itself was a test of one's judgment. If one's judgment wasn't good enough and bought a fake item, could one still find someone to settle the score? That person had already said that he couldn't identify it. Regardless of whether it was real or fake, at least in terms of righteousness, the Great Void Auction wasn't weak at all. Wow, so that's just a low-grade treasure weapon. That person is really pitiful. He used 10,000 high-grade spirit stones to buy a treasure that's worth 10,000 low-grade spirit stones. Ling Yuhan said in surprise. Hearing this, Tianyang and Tai Wuji also smiled. The Great Void Auction itself wasn't very formal. Therefore, it wasn't unusual for such an item to appear. 10,000 high-grade spirit stones had become 10,000 low-grade spirit stones. This matter was just a small episode in the auction. Soon, the next item was presented. The next item is also one of the mysterious treasures that our Great Void Auction can't identify. It's a strange treasure that was discovered in the Great Void Secret Realm. The auctioneer smiled. When he thought of the appearance of the treasure, he felt a little guilty. This treasure, however, in the next moment, the treasure appeared in the center of the auction stage, exposed to everyone's eyes. F***CK. Isn't this just a piece of rock? Even the Great Void Auction can't scam people like this. A mysterious treasure that can't be identified? Isn't this nonsense? It's just a piece of rock. Who can identify anything? Go play with your eggs. The moment this treasure appeared, the entire Great Void Auction went into an uproar. However, this uproar was a bit more negative. That was because the so-called treasure was, in fact, a huge rock. It was a huge rock that was 10 feet long, 3 feet wide, and 5 feet tall. On the surface, it looked like an ordinary rock. Even if one used their soul power to detect it, they wouldn't be able to detect anything. It was no wonder that these people were so angry. Wasn't the Great Void Auction playing with them like monkeys? Originally, when they heard the words mysterious treasure, everyone was a little afraid. In the end, if they didn't salvage the situation, they would be given another piece of rock. At this moment, the Great Void Auction's reputation had been reduced by a lot. On the auction stage, the auctioneer also had an awkward expression. He didn't know what was wrong with the higher-ups to allow this piece of rock to come up. However, how could a small auctioneer like him go against the orders of the higher-ups? This rock. No, this treasure is genuine. It was found in the Great Void Secret Realm. Moreover, the Great Void Auction used many methods, but they couldn't find anything mysterious about it. That's why they let it out. The auctioneer racked his brains and stammered out these two sentences. However, when they heard this, everyone still had a smile on their faces. They weren't fools. How could they be so easily fooled? At this moment, Tianyang had nothing to do, so he used his soul power to scan the huge rock. The next moment, his eyes narrowed. Chapter 497. The auctioneer shouted with all his might on the stage, but there was no response at all. After all, no matter how one looked at it, it was just a stone. It was almost no different from an ordinary mountain rock. So what if it came from the Great Void Mystic Realm? There were many similar stones in the Great Void Mystic Realm. Could it be that all of them could be auctioned at the Great Void Auction? The auctioneer's heart was filled with bitterness. Just as he had said, this stone had an extraordinary origin. It was brought out from a ruin in the Great Void Mystic Realm by a young genius from the Great Void Auction. That young man had almost done his best for this ruin. Not only was this stone in the ruin, but it was also placed in the deepest part of the ruin, where the defenses were the strongest. The secret within was definitely not small. Unfortunately, no matter what methods the Great Void Auction used, they were unable to find out the details of this stone. They had even invited a powerful cultivator from the Heaven's Secret sect, but he was still unable to find out anything. They could not bear to throw it away, but they could only keep it. The Great Void Auction had no choice but to auction off. However, it seemed that the act of selling an inferior-grade treasure artifact was too shocking, causing this group of people to be traumatized by the words mysterious treasure. Until now, not a single person had bid. It was simply too tragic. If the secret within is discovered, it will definitely not be bad. Are you really not going to buy it? The auctioneer roared. Hearing this, the crowd was still indifferent. Seeing this, the auctioneer could only sigh. Wait, what's the starting bid? At this moment, a light flashed in Tianyang's eyes, and he spoke indifferently. Hearing this, the auctioneer was stunned. Ling Yuhan and Tai Wuji were also stunned. Everyone else in the auction house was stunned. They could all tell that this voice belonged to the mysterious young man who had ridiculed the crowd and killed Han Tianpeng and Han Tianxiong. Now, this person wanted to buy this lousy stone? Ha ha! I'm dying of laughter. Don't tell me you're not convinced that you didn't get the Sword Soul armor and are throwing money to buy this lousy stone? This lousy stone, there are as many as you want in the back mountain of my house. How about I sell them all to you for one high-grade spirit stone each? TSK, I thought that he was just a scheming old fox. I didn't expect him to be such a fool. I wouldn't want this broken stone even if he gave it to me. Why would he buy it? The crowd mocked. Tianyang remained unmoved and looked at the auctioneer indifferently. Ling Yuhan, who was standing at the side, turned her head to look at the broken stone. Her master's terrifying eyesight had almost never failed. It was not unheard of for rare treasures to be found from trash. However, no matter how he looked at it, this rock only had a hint of the aura of the Great Void secret realm. Young Master Tai Wuji could not help but speak up. Hearing this, Tianyang waved his hand. It's just a few spirit stones. If you really can't do it, you can just go home and play with it. I have money anyway. Revolt. Positive. Me? Yes. Money. The invisible posturing had deeply hurt Iron Wuji's young and helpless heart. Damn it. As the Sword Star City Lord, he did not dare to say such words. At this moment, the auctioneer seemed to have woken up from a dream and stammered. 1,000 low-grade spirit stones. The original starting price was 1 high-grade spirit stone. However, after the ridicule of these people, the auctioneer did not dare to be certain and directly dropped it by 10%. Hearing this, Tianyang's expression did not change. The surrounding people also began to mock. What the hell is this? The Great Void Auction is really not good this time. They dare to sell this lousy stone for 1,000 low-grade spirit stones? Although it's only a matter of a few hours of cultivation, this is too much of a scam. The crowd was furious. Hearing this, the auctioneer, who was only at the transformation realm, immediately trembled. He was afraid that the almighty sea of soul realm experts here would kill him in anger. However, the auctioneer's gaze still turned to Tianyang. What if that person really had too much money and nowhere to spend it? Tianyang naturally would not spend money recklessly. If that was the case, even if Tianyang had tens of billions of low-grade spirit stones, he would have squandered them long ago. Just now, when Tianyang probed with his soul power, he clearly sensed a trace of powerful aura hidden within the stone. That trace of aura was not much weaker than Tianyang's own. Clearly, this was the aura of a great emperor. Coming from the Great Void secret realm and having the aura of a great emperor, there was only one possibility: Great Void Emperor. Anything related to a great emperor, even if it was just a basin, was priceless. The aura of a great emperor contained within the stone was extremely dense. Clearly, it was not an ordinary stone that was stepped on a few times. However, it was sealed very well by the Great Void Emperor. Otherwise, the people of the Great Void Auction would not have been unable to see anything. 1,000 low-grade spirit stones? This price is a little high. However, although he had seen through the stone's secret, Tianyang still raised his voice and said with dissatisfaction. Hearing this, the auctioneer's face turned ashen. At this moment, a middle-aged man stood up from the side. He had a trace of 6th level C of Soul Realm Spirit King's aura. 1,000 low-grade spirit stones can be lowered even further. Even if I give it to you for free, there's no harm, the middle-aged man said. Hearing this, the auctioneer's eyes widened. Head steward. Hearing this, everyone was shocked. They looked at the 6th level C of Soul Realm Spirit King with incomparable shock. This person, hidden in the crowd, was actually the Great Void Auction's head steward. This concealment technique was a little too good. However, Tianyong would not hesitate for a second because of this person's identity. He looked at the middle-aged man's face and said indifferently, "Auctions are the means of merchants. Merchants value profits. I don't believe that the Great Void Auction would be so kind." Hearing this, the middle-aged man's eyebrows twitched. He looked at Tianyong with some surprise. This person's bearing now seemed to be completely different from that arrogant aristocratic family's son from before. However, the middle-aged man was a merchant after all. Naturally, he would not care too much about these details. He said, "Of course, I can make the decision and give it to you for free. However, if one day you discover the secret within, you must share it with us. 1,000 low-grade spirit stones in exchange for a secret? This business of yours is not very honest," Tianyong said with a faint smile. Hearing this, the middle-aged man's expression changed slightly. He looked deeply at Tianyong. He had a feeling. Could it be that Tianyong had already seen through some tricks? At this moment, the middle-aged man even had the thought of directly snatching it and studying it again. However, thinking of his countless failures before, he immediately calmed down. "Of course not. If the secret is true, then you are my Void Trading Company's VIP," the middle-aged man said. Hearing this, everyone's pupils shrank. Void Trading Company? Hearing this, Tianyong's expression changed slightly. He also laughed lightly. Deal. Chapter 498. After being in the Central Region for more than a month, Tianyong had a certain understanding of the various factions in the Central Region. The Void Trading Company behind the Great Void Auction was the one that Tianyong understood the most. This was because the Void Trading Company had existed for tens of thousands of years, and it had managed to survive until the great destruction of the civilization. 10,000 years ago, Tianyong had frequently gone to the Void Trading Company to auction some items. He had not expected that 10,000 years later, he would once again have dealings with the Void Trading Company. The Void Trading Company was a first-rate faction. It had 16 Spirit King powerhouses under its command, 18 Spirit Sea Realm cultivators, and countless Tao Fire Realm and Primordial Transformation Realm cultivators. If these powerhouses were really united, the Void Trading Company would even be comparable to a martial sacred ground. However, because of the trading company, it was naturally impossible for them to be completely united. However, it was enough to make the Void Trading Company a transcendent existence that was above the average first-rate faction. These people had not expected that the Void Trading Company was behind the Great Void Auction. Similarly, they had not expected that the Void Trading Company would actually give a young man who did not even look 20 years old a VIP status because of a stone. The VIP of the Void Trading Company was comparable to an elder of a second-rate faction, regardless of strength or status. Did I hear wrongly? The Great Void Auction is actually the Void Trading Company. I was wondering why no one had any ideas about the Great Void Auction and why no one had any idea about it. Every year, there would be a few auctions that would last for decades. It turns out that it is the Void Trading Company. Such a huge entity would actually give a young man in the Tao Fire Realm a VIP status. If I had known earlier, I would have asked for the price. Countless people were either shocked, envious, jealous, or angry. However, none of this could cover up the fact that Tianyong had become the most dazzling person in the entire venue at that moment. Outside the auction house, the two brothers, Han Tianpeng and Han Tianxiong, stared at Tianyong's back view. They were about to grind their teeth to pieces. This was the person who had cheated them of 5 million high-grade spirit stones. This was the person who had publicly humiliated the City Lord mansion of Venus City. And now, this person had become the focus of the entire venue. Deal? That's right. Men, quickly give this great void divine stone to this young hero. Hearing these words, the 6th level C of Soul Realm General Manager nodded his head. Although he didn't know Tianyang at all, he had a premonition. This smiling young man might give him a pleasant surprise. Tianyang received it with a calm expression. However, the words of the Spirit King's chief steward made him a little concerned. Void divine stone? It seemed that this stone was definitely related to the Taishu Emperor. Unfortunately, Tianyang glanced at the head chief. This was related to the inheritance of the Great Void Emperor. Even if he shared the secret with them, it would be useless. There was only one chance for the inheritance. As for handing it over to someone else, what a joke. Wouldn't he be fulfilling his promise if he told the Void Trading Company after he found the inheritance? In any case, they had only said that they would share the secret, but not the opportunity behind the secret. Then, one by one, the auction items went up for auction, but Tianyang was too lazy to make a move. His thoughts were completely focused on the Great Void Divine Stone. Even if it was a high-grade spiritual weapon, the sky-breaking flame armor, he only took a few more glances at it. This sky-breaking flame armor was indeed, as Tai Wuji had said. The requirements for the owner were extremely high. If Tianyang was not wrong, to make the sky-breaking flame armor recognize him as its owner, he would at least have to control a spiritual fire. Spiritual fire. How could a rare item of heaven and earth be so easy to find? Tianyang was already very lucky to be able to obtain the spiritual fire of destruction in the Northern Wilderness secret region. After leaving the Northern Wilderness region for more than a year, Tianyang had not seen another spiritual fire. There was not even a bit of news about it. This showed how rare spiritual fires were. The man who had spent 3 million high-grade spiritual stones to obtain the sky-breaking flame armor would probably cry himself to death. However, this was someone else's business after all. Tianyang was too lazy to care. He kept the Great Void Divine Stone and left immediately. However, this Great Void auction had caused a sensation in the east of the central region. Firstly, the Great Void auction was backed by the colossal Void Trading Company. Secondly, a mysterious young man had mocked everyone and caused the death of the Golden Star City Governor's young master. He had even made a deal with the Void Trading Company. These two pieces of news were like a storm. In just a few days, they had spread throughout the east of the central region. Everyone was only surprised by the first piece of news. The Great Void auction could not have been held for so long without a backer. Many people had also guessed the possibility of the Void Trading Company. However, the second piece of news shocked countless people, especially when they found out that the person was from a third-rate force, the Star Swordplay sect. Zhotong was so busy in the Star Swordplay sect that he was in a terrible fix. In his heart, he admired Tianyang immensely. It had only been a few days, and you had already created such a huge piece of news. I'm impressed. As the main character of this matter, Tianyang was completely unaware. He had been staying in the governor's mansion for 3 consecutive days. This Great Void Divine Stone is indeed extraordinary. It looks and senses like a very ordinary mountain rock. In the end, the moment I made a move, I was repelled. Tianyang sized up the Great Void Divine Stone that was 5 times the size and nodded slightly. Legend had it that the primordial emperor, Shi Su, and the Great Void Emperor seemed to have an inexplicable relationship. This had almost become an eternal mystery in the Sky Continent. However, this was something that even Tianyang in his previous life could not figure out. Now he understood. The primordial emperor, Shi Su, and the Great Void Emperor had nothing to do with each other. The method on this Great Void Divine Stone and the primordial emperor, Shi Su's Shi Su technique were 2 completely different paths. However, thanks to the primordial emperor, Shi Su, Tianyang had finally found a way to break it. The Great Void is formless, and the primordial void is formless. This Great Void Divine Stone itself is a magic treasure. If I use virtual primordial true essence to bombard an important point, then the secret of this great void divine stone can be revealed. Tianyang chuckled. In the beginning, he had obtained the incomplete Su technique in the Lingyun sect's outer sect martial skills pavilion. Therefore, he could also use virtual primordial true essence. If this stone was still in the Great Void auction, they would not be able to find a way to open it even if they lived for another few hundred years. It's here. The soul power of the peak ascension realm circulated rapidly. Virtual primordial true essence condensed on Tianyang's finger. In the next moment, he pointed his finger. Boom! The entire Great Void divine stone burst into rays of bright light, as if it was tearing apart the night sky. Then, rays of light were released, and the Great Void divine stone directly disintegrated. The solid stone from before had turned into stone powder on the ground, almost burying Tianyang's feet. And in the center of the stone powder, a miniature sword that was shining with light but seemed to be illusory was lying quietly on the ground. Chapter 499. It was a small sword that shone with an illusory light. The moment he saw the small sword, Tianyang's eyes narrowed slightly. The Taishu Emperor uses a sword as well. Tianyang muttered. The Great Void Emperor lived in the ancient era that was even longer than 10,000 years ago. He was only a few thousand years younger than the Red Dragon Wuzun. Therefore, the records of the Great Void Emperor in Heaven Continent only had a small name and a brief summary. If the Great Void Emperor had not left behind a Great Void Mystery Realm, there would only be a name left in this world. However, after the destruction of the civilization, there were not many records left behind for the Great Void Emperor. Therefore, Tianyang knew about the Great Void Emperor's weapon. If it's a sword, I can spar with it, but this person is already dead. Tianyang muttered. Then, he walked forward and picked up the small sword. The small sword was not long, only about the length of 2 palms. The decoration was also very simple. However, the majestic aura it contained made Tianyang squint slightly. The Great Void Emperor was not much weaker than he was in his previous life. Tianyang probed with his soul power, but he did not find anything. After all, not every treasure left behind had the soul brand left by the owner. However, Tianyang had a feeling that this small sword could only show its true brilliance after entering the Great Void Mystery Realm. Now, after that, Tianyang cleaned up the stone powder and used the Spirit Annihilation Flame to incinerate it. He then left and returned to his room to cultivate. If nothing unexpected happened, there was not much time left before the Great Void Mystery Realm opened. In these few days, even if he could not break through to the half-sea of Soul Realm, it would not hurt to consolidate his true yuan. In other parts of the Sword Star City, many genius cultivators below the Spirit Sea Realm had also gathered. In other huge cities, there were also many geniuses gathered. This was because the Great Void Mystery Realm was about to open. Among them, there were even some old men who had been stuck at the half-sea of Soul Realm for many years. Naturally, they would go to the Great Void Mystery Realm to seek an opportunity to break through. Winds and clouds converge. Dragons and snakes converge. This was the most accurate summary of the Great Void Secret Realm. 3 days later, Tianyang and Ling Yuhan walked out of the City Lord's mansion. Both of them also had a token in their hands. Due to Tai Wuji's sudden appearance, Tianyang's original plan to put Ling Yuhan into his interspatial bag before bringing her in was naturally useless. Furthermore, if he really did that, Ling Yuhan wouldn't be able to obtain any points. She wouldn't even be ranked, let alone first place. Young Master Tian, the Great Void Mystery Land was created by the Great Void Emperor in the Primordial Age. There are countless treasures in it, and the spiritual chi of heaven and earth is abundant. However, many ferocious beasts have also been born. The weakest of these ferocious beasts have the strength of the 2nd level of the Tao Fire Realm, and the strongest, even Spirit Sea Realm cultivators have to avoid them. Although young Master Tian's strength is already extremely strong, when you encounter ferocious beasts that can contend with Spirit Sea Realm cultivators, it's best to be decisive. Don't be greedy for points, Tai Wuji said. Hearing this, Tianyang nodded slightly. The number of points was determined by the number and level of the ferocious beasts killed. A second-level Dao Fire Realm Ferocious Beast was naturally only worth 1 point. A third-level Dao Fire Realm was only worth 10 points. A half-step Spirit Sea Realm was worth 100 points. A peak half-step Spirit Sea Realm was worth 1,000 points. A first-level Spirit Sea Realm was worth 10,000 points. As for the stronger ones, they were calculated according to the first level of the Spirit Sea Realm. After all, not many people could kill ferocious beasts of that level. Was there a difference between 10,000 and 20,000? Geniuses who could reach this level wouldn't care about these points. We're here. The three of them flew at an extremely fast speed. Very soon, they arrived at a vast plain. At this moment, the power of the sun gradually poured onto the plain, and lines of formation patterns slowly appeared. This is the teleportation array closest to the Great Void Mystery Land. The Great Void Mystery Land is outside of the central region. It will only appear at certain times. Therefore, it's not just Swordstar City. There are similar arrays near other huge cities that connect to the Great Void Mystery Land. Tai Wuji explained. Then, he raised his head and looked at the people around him. His expression gradually became serious. Young Master Tian, your previous actions were too eye-catching. There are definitely many people who want to find trouble with you in the Great Void Mystery Land. When the time comes, you must act according to your ability. Tai Wuji said. Hearing this, Tianyang nodded slightly and looked at these people indifferently. Most of them were cultivators below the Spirit Sea Realm. Other than a few old people, most of them were young people. These youngsters looked at Tianyang with eyes that were either filled with rage, contempt, killing intent, or disdain. There were many different emotions. Among them, most of them were angry and murderous. It seemed that the wave of mockery at the Great Void Auction a few days ago was very successful. The ones with the most murderous intent were undoubtedly the two brothers, Han Tianpeng and Han Tianxiong. After being cheated of 5 million upper spirit stones, anyone would be furious. Han Tianpeng and Han Tianxiong looked coldly at Tianyang as thoughts flashed through their minds. The reason why they had not attacked before was because Tai Wuji was protecting them in Swordstar City. However, once they were in the Great Void Mystery Land, Tianyang would have no one to rely on. When the time came, Tianyang would become a plaything for them to trample on. The two brothers had already started to plan how to make Tianyang pay back the spirit stones that he had cheated them of. Tianyang looked at the two of them speechlessly. His murderous intent was obvious on his face. Were these two idiots afraid that Tianyang would not be able to tell? You want to kill me? Tianyang laughed softly. Hearing this, the faces of Han Tianpeng and Han Tianxiong darkened. At this moment, Tianyang laughed softly. Can the two of you do it? It wasn't just the Han Tianxiong and Han Tianpeng brothers who were enraged. Even the others were enraged. Arrogant. Too arrogant. Tianyang. Doesn't he know that there is always someone better than him out there? When the real geniuses make their move, this arrogant Tianyang will die a violent death. He only knows how to talk big. After entering the Great Void Mystery Land, who knows where he will run off to? Everyone was furious. Hearing this, Tianyang smiled again. He felt that the proficiency of his group mockery skill was almost full. At this moment, as the sun reached its peak, the runes under everyone's feet became clearer. In the next moment, a terrifying energy storm appeared. Boom! A deep space door opened. In just a few breaths, it expanded to a huge area. When everyone saw this, their hearts trembled. They were extremely excited. Chapter 500. Boom! A terrifying explosion erupted from the sky, accompanied by countless lightning arcs that blasted in all directions. Seeing this, the expressions of the countless youths who had just entered the Great Void Secret Plane changed greatly as they looked over in shock. What's that? Why do I feel like I'll be blasted to death just like that? Don't tell me there's some ferocious beast wreaking havoc. There's only lightning and no strange phenomenon. It's definitely not the birth of a treasure. Let's run. Idiot, what are you standing there for? Do you want to be struck to death by lightning? Hurry up and run. The crowd shouted. Soon, the people around the thunderstorm scattered like birds and beasts. Not long after, Tianyong walked out of the thunderstorm with a speechless look on his face. At this moment, his hair was all messed up by the lightning. If not for the strength of his true dragon body, he would have been blasted to pieces. This great Void Emperor really knows how to play dirty. I didn't do anything when I just entered, and I was struck by lightning. With a surge of quintessential essence, Tianyong returned to his original appearance. He held a mini sword in his hand and could not help but mutter. If not for the mini sword, he would not have been blasted to such an extent. 10 minutes ago, the Great Void Secret Realm has opened. Seeing the rapidly expanding space door, the crowd was shocked. In the next moment, the younger disciples rushed in. Tianyong, how dare you cheat us of 1.5 million upper spiritual stones? Wash your neck clean and wait for me in the Great Void Secret Realm. Han Tianxiong's face was full of hatred. As a disciple of the Mountain River sect, when had he ever suffered such a setback? In terms of IQ and strategy, he had been completely crushed. Others might think that Tianyong was just a good-for-nothing, but he did not think so. How could someone who could display such terrifying strength at the Genius Gathering be a good-for-nothing who only knew how to throw money around? It was obvious that Tianyong had set up a trap that targeted them. Therefore, Han Tianxiong and Han Tianpeng hated Tianyong to the extreme. They could not wait to kill Tianyong. Hearing this, Tianyong smiled faintly. You're not qualified to kill me. Then, Tianyong flipped his wrist, and the mini sword from the Void Divine Stone appeared in his hand. He walked in. Damn it, big brother, let's go too. Han Tianxiong's face was full of anger. He called out to Han Tianpeng and followed him in. Then, hundreds of geniuses stepped into the space door. Tens of thousands of geniuses from other places also entered the Great Void Mystery Land. Great Void Secret Realm. With a flash of silver light, Tianyong came to the top of the mountain. Feeling the spiritual chi of heaven and earth that was much more abundant than that of the Star Swordplay sect, he smiled. The natural spirit chi here is indeed not bad. If I can train for a couple of months, I might be able to step into the Sea of Souls realm. Tianyong smiled. However, every time the Great Void Secret Realm opened, it would only be open for 3 months. 3 months later, Tianyong would probably be 17 years old. Speaking of which, why is there no reaction from the mini sword after entering the Great Void Secret Realm? Tianyong raised his hand and looked at the mini sword in his hand. In the next moment, the mini sword seemed to feel the change in its surroundings. The entire small sword began to heat up, and it began to emit rays of light that were tens of thousands of feet long. Then, it was the terrifying thunderstorm that covered the sky and earth and was enough to kill countless geniuses. After recalling, Tianyong turned his head and looked behind him. Countless dire beasts had died in this thunderstorm, and the mountain peak that Tianyong had been standing on had also been pulverized by the thunderstorm. At this time, the token in Tianyong's hand that was used to record his points suddenly trembled. The number on it began to refresh rapidly. From 0, it began to rise crazily. With every breath, it would increase by more than 10 points. In the end, after around 10 breaths' time, Tianyong's points had increased from 0 to 3,251. Opening the list, Tianyong's name was in first place. He crushed the second place with 3,000 points. This is a little. Tianyong was speechless. Could it be that the token used the thunderstorm as a way to clear the area? However, the thunderstorm was not in vain. With more than 3,000 points, he had defeated everyone. F*CK. More than 3,000 points. Who is this Tianyong? Why is he so awesome? On the other side of the Great Void Secret Realm, the handsome young man who had just killed a nest of Second Heaven Dao, Fire Realm demonic beasts, took out his token. Just as he wanted to see his ranking, his eyes widened. More than 3,000 points was more than 10 times his own points. Third Heaven Dao, Fire Realm? This must be a joke. However, this Tianyong's strength is really not to be underestimated. The young man muttered and then walked out of the forest. Tianyong's terrifying number of points had deeply moved his soul, causing him to want to kill his way through the entire Great Void Secret Realm. If anyone saw this person, they would definitely exclaim in shock. This was because this person was currently ranked second on the hunting list from the Sun Moon sect, a first-rate force, Zhu Naoyang. On the other side, Han Tianpeng and Han Tianxiong looked at the hunting list in disbelief. Their expressions were as ugly as if they had just eaten sh*t. How is this possible? How is this possible? Tianyang is from a third-rate force. How can he have such strength? Han Tianpeng roared. Hearing this, Han Tianxiong's expression was extremely ugly. Could it be that this kid was so lucky that he encountered multiple nests of beasts? Otherwise, it's impossible for him to have such terrifying points. Han Tianxiong said. Hearing this, Han Tianpeng nodded. Although the possibility was extremely low, he could only believe it. Other than this, was there any other explanation? Outside the Great Void Secret Realm, in the largest city in the eastern part of the central region, an old man leisurely took a sip of wine from his flask. Then, he casually waved his hand and opened a space projection. It's been 10 minutes. My little Yang should be ranked first. The old man chuckled. Then, he looked at the projection that had stabilized. Pooh! The old man spat out a mouthful of precious wine. He looked at the scene in shock. Tianyang? What the hell? How can my Lil Yang lose to this person? More than 3,000 points? Did you assassinate 3 half-step C of Soul Realm beasts? At this moment, an 8th level C of Soul Realm middle-aged man pushed open the door. Dad, what's wrong? The old man glanced at the middle-aged man and handed over his wine flask expressionlessly. Drink some water first. The middle-aged man took the wine flask doubtfully. This wine was extremely precious to his father. How could he bear to let him take a sip? However, the middle-aged man still took a sip. This kind of wine that could increase one's cultivation base was rare. Then look at this. The old man was expressionless as he moved the space projection. Chapter 501. At this moment, in Sword Star City, Tai Wuji looked at the hunting list in front of him, extremely excited. Young Master Tian is truly young Master Tian. Even the Sun Moon sect and the Heavenly Demon cult are suppressed. Tai Wuji said excitedly. On the other side, Elder Kushan looked at the hunting list with a gloomy expression. This was because his family's Han Tianpeng and Han Tianxiong were only ranked in the 1,000th place. They had only killed a few third-level Dao Fire Realm ferocious beasts and could not even compare to the others. This Tianyang must have used some trick. Otherwise, how could he have obtained more than 3,000 points in such a short time? Elder Kushan snorted coldly. Hearing this, Tai Wuji laughed mockingly. He's still better than that precious junior of yours from the Mountain River sect. This little sword disappeared after being a lightning rod once. What's going on? Tianyang muttered. At this moment, the little sword was lying quietly in Tianyang's palm. Whether Tianyang used his inner yuan or soul power, there was no reaction at all. Speechless, Tianyang put it away. In any case, this little sword must have something to do with the inheritance of the Taishu Emperor. Otherwise, it would not have been hidden so deeply. Tianyang was about to turn and leave when an angry roar came from behind him. I didn't expect you to be here. An arrogant snort was heard, with a strong, murderous intent. Humph! The Tianyang who slapped so many people in the face at the Gathering of Geniuses and was so impressive at the Taishu auction and now on the hunting list has been caught by us. At this moment, a beautiful woman walked out and looked coldly at Tianyang. Now just wait for your death. Seeing this person, Tianyang remembered. Wasn't this person the person who jumped out after he killed Han Tianpeng and a passerby during the Gathering of Geniuses? He seemed to be called Yin something or Yin something. Back then, he had attacked Ling Yuhan, so Tianyang had a slight impression of him. Looking at this person's eyes, it seemed like he wanted to kill him. Tianyang's eyes narrowed slightly. It had only been less than 2 hours. Even if he killed these people, he wouldn't get many points. It would be a little difficult if he still had to make a move. At this moment, the woman snorted coldly. Do you think you can escape by remaining silent? Uncle Luke, kill him. Offending me is the greatest sin in your life. The woman snorted coldly. Hearing those words, an old man behind her immediately walked forward. His eyes were filled with killing intent as he looked at Tianyang. You're the Tianyang who taught Han Tianping and Yi Qing a lesson during the Gathering of Geniuses, and even heavily injured the eldest miss? Hearing this, Tianyang smiled and immediately understood. This unknown fellow probably had some self-awareness and knew that he was no match for him. That was why he called this old man over. From the old man's sharp fingers and flexible joints, he was probably an assassin. Compared to Tianyang, who slaughtered the heavenly Een mountain branch in the eastern part of the Heavensval territory, he wasn't inferior at all. If a genius of a generation can grow up, he'll at least be a Sea of Soul Realm expert. Unfortunately, he's too young and too arrogant. When you reincarnate in your next life, remember my words. Uncle Lu snorted coldly. In the next moment, the true essence in his hand surged, and he directly attacked. Ghost shadow footwork. Uncle Lu roared. In the next moment, his true essence condensed, and his entire body seemed to disappear between heaven and earth. Immediately after, a bone-piercing cold wind came from Tianyang's back. An extremely sharp light shot towards Tianyang's neck. Middle-grade Earth-class martial technique, Cold Bone Claw. Uncle Lu screamed, and the true essence of a half-step Sea of Soul Realm expert instantly exploded. Endless cold air almost filled the entire world. That chilling, murderous intent, which seemed to be able to freeze and shatter one's heart, exploded at this moment. Your strength is not bad, and your cultivation of this martial technique is not bad. At this moment, Tianyang spoke indifferently, and the true essence in his body slightly fluctuated. It's a pity that you're an accomplice to a villain. In the next moment, terrifying true essence instantly erupted and directly blasted Uncle Lu away. That cold bone claw was also directly shattered into powder. Uncle Lu spat out blood and heavily smashed onto the ground. A few of his bones were broken. Seeing this, the woman's expression immediately changed greatly. She never expected that Uncle Lu, whom she had spent hundreds of thousands of high-grade spirit stones to hire to attack once, would actually be so weak in front of Tianyang. Uncle Lu had even used a low-grade Earth-class martial technique. Once it was used, even a Sea of Soul Realm expert would suffer some injuries if caught off guard. As for Tianyang, he didn't even move. Just the release of some unknown energy shattered Uncle Lu's attack and sent him flying. Was this really the strength of a third-level Dao Fire Realm cultivator? It's only right that you were taught a lesson for being arrogant. However, since you killed someone, then I can't let you live. Tianyang didn't even look at Uncle Lu. Back then, it was easy for him to kill the general manager of the Heavenly Een Mountain branch, let alone the current him. Although the current Uncle Lu's life wasn't in danger, he had suffered countless internal injuries from this shock. He constantly coughed out blood, and it was obvious that he didn't have the ability to fight anymore. What are you doing? The woman looked at Tianyang, and a look of fear flashed across her face. She hurriedly took a few steps back. You can't kill me. If you kill me, the power behind me will definitely not let you off. This is not any other place. There are countless hidden dragons and crouching tigers in the central region. The power behind me can crush you, a person from a third-rate power, to death with a single finger. The woman roared, but her body couldn't stop trembling. Hearing this, Tianyang smiled faintly. At the tip of his finger, the annihilation spirit fire quietly rose. I've heard these words countless times from the mouths of countless people. In the end, the power behind the people who said these words either died or was destroyed. There are also many that exist in name only. Tianyang said indifferently. In the next moment, the annihilation spirit fire instantly increased by countless times. With me here, don't even think about making a move against the young miss. At this time, Uncle Lu rushed out at an unknown time and roared. The true essence in his body violently fluctuated, and he was actually going to self-destruct. Your strength is not bad. If you have the opportunity, it's not impossible for you to break through to the Sea of Soul Realm. It's a pity that you're going to die here. Tianyang looked at Uncle Lu expressionlessly, and the annihilation spirit fire in his hand directly shot out. Boom! The annihilation spirit fire burned fiercely, and Uncle Lu's true essence was instantly burned into nothingness. In the next moment, it directly swallowed Uncle Lu's body. A peak half-step sea of soul realm expert dead. Immediately after, Tianyang turned his head and looked at the woman who was about to lose control of her bladder. A cold look flashed across his eyes. Even though this woman was somewhat beautiful, so what? If she had to be killed, she would be killed. In the next moment, Tianyang's finger condensed a ray of light and directly pierced through the woman's head, tearing her soul sea apart. The dignified young miss of the Yin family also died here. Chapter 502. After killing the two of them, Tianyang's expression was calm. He casually collected their tokens and left. Tianyang would not even bat an eyelid if he killed two people, even if they were an old man and a woman. In a battle, there are only those who deserve to be killed and those who did not. Without a doubt, these two people deserve to be killed. Since they deserve to be killed, Tianyang would not show them any mercy. Two poor bastards. They must have come looking for trouble from the start. TSK, they only added up to 100 points. What's the point? Tianyang pursed his lips. After transferring the points to himself, he threw away the two tokens that had been eliminated. After obtaining the points, if the points returned to 0 for more than 10 hours, or if the owner died and the points returned to 0, the token would be eliminated. As for whether the owner was dead or alive, that was not the hunting board's concern. In the Great Void secret realm, the closer to the center, the more opportunities and spiritual energy there are. Let's go take a look at the center. Tianyang muttered to himself. Then, he rose into the air and flew towards the center of the Great Void secret realm. As Tianyang flew, the mini-sword emitted a faint light that grew stronger and stronger. How long has it been? Hundreds of people have already been eliminated. It's only been 8 hours, and people have already been eliminated. It's obvious that these people are all dead. Han Tianpeng and Han Tianxiong looked at the number of people on the hunting board, and their hearts trembled. In just a few minutes, more than 10 people had been eliminated. It was hard to say if there would be 80,000 people left after a week. Although the Great Void secret realm was filled with opportunities and treasures, it was also filled with danger. That's why we have to protect ourselves. I've already joined the Mountain River sect. This Great Void secret realm is to raise my status. Big brother, you haven't joined any factions yet. This time, you have to get a good result. Han Tianxiong said. Han Tianpeng nodded, then hesitated. But Tianyang already has more than 5,000 points. That's 10 times more than the second place, Jun Aoyang, and 15 times more than the third place, Yiqingyu. To be able to maintain this position for so long, Tianyang's strength must not be weak. Don't tell me that we're not going to avenge ourselves? Han Tianpeng said. Hearing this, Han Tianxiong sneered. How is that possible? He cheated us of 5 million upper spiritual stones. How can we not take revenge for this? 1,500,000 high-grade spirit stones is equivalent to 15 billion low-grade spirit stones. Even if it's our Venus City's city lore manor, if we want to take out such a huge sum of money, we would have to suffer a huge loss. Isn't Tianyang rich? Then, this huge sum of money will be repaid with his life. Han Tianxiong raged. Hearing this, Han Tianpeng was slightly stunned. Then, he opened his mouth and looked like he wanted to say something. Big brother, what do you want to say? Just say it. If I'm not wrong, you want to ask if we can beat him? Han Tianxiong laughed. Hearing this, Han Tianpeng nodded. One look, and they could tell that Tianyang's strength was extraordinary. If the two of them were to act rashly, they might even be killed by Tianyang in an instant. Back at the Genius Gathering, Han Tianpeng had been easily defeated. Now, Tianyang had displayed unparalleled strength. The two of them might not be able to beat him. I already knew that Tianyang's strength was extraordinary, so I've already prepared a plan. Han Tianxiong sneered. In the next moment, his interspatial bag shook, and the inner yuan in his body trembled slightly. A small compass and a huge formation appeared in his hands. I've absorbed a bit of the aura of the heavenly sun from this feng shui compass, so I can easily find the heavenly sun. As for this spell formation, it's my most powerful killing move to kill the heavenly sun. For these two treasures, I've spent a lot of my sect contribution points in the Mountain River sect just to kill Tianyang. Now, I'll definitely succeed. Han Tianxiong laughed heartily. Hearing this, Han Tianpeng felt the majestic aura from the two treasures and nodded in awe. He clenched his fists, looking as if victory was already in his hands. With these two treasures, wouldn't killing a heavenly sun expert be as easy as flipping one's hand? Tianyang is nearby right now. Han Tianxiong's eyes narrowed slightly. Then he immediately leaped into the air. Then, let's not delay. This Tianyang has more than 5,000 contribution points. Of course, the sooner we kill him, the better. The two of them flew up and headed in the direction that the compass was pointing at. This hunting leaderboard is really disgusting. Tianyang could not help but mumble to himself as he wiped the blood off his palms. Out of the 100,000 contestants, only a few hundred had become enemies with him. However, along the way, he did not know anyone at all. The number of people who wanted to kill him was even more than the number he had drawn in the beginning. After all, the number one spot on the hunting leaderboard was the biggest target for hatred. In order to get Tianyang's 5,000 contribution points, these people were willing to do anything. However, most of them became part of Tianyang's contribution points. Only a few managed to escape with their powerful Dharma treasures. However, they were also severely injured by Tianyang. There was almost no place for them in the top 10,000 of the hunting leaderboard. Let me see how many I've killed along the way. Tianyang looked at the token in his hand. Because it had just been activated, most of the contestants only had a few dozen or 100 points. It was not a lot. Those who had more points were the top 10 on the hunting leaderboard. Of course, many a little makes a mickle, and the points Tianyang gained from killing them were considerable as well. The current ranking on the hunting leaderboard was as follows. First, Tianyang of the Stars Swordplay Sect, 5,891 points. Second, Jun Aoyang of the Sun Moon Sect, 639 points. Third, Yi Qingyu of the Sky Demon Cult, 488 points. Fourth, Ling Yuhan of the Stars Swordplay Sect, 287 points. Fifth, Yu Ruling of the River Moon Sect, 286 points. There was almost a gap between the top 3 and the top 5, just as there was a huge gap between the first and the top 3. Apart from a thunderstorm at the beginning, Tianyang did not kill many ferals. The reason why his points rose so quickly was all thanks to these children of wealth who did not know their own limits. On the other hand, Jun Aoyang and Yi Qingyu were struggling to kill ferals. Tianyang had left them in the dust. An hour ago, Tianyang only had 5,200 points, while Jun Aoyang had 520. An hour later, Tianyang had almost 700 points, while Jun Aoyang was only a little over 100. That was the difference. Tianyang was thinking about flying and did not pay much attention to his surroundings. At that moment, his soul power suddenly stirred, and Tianyang immediately came to his senses. His flying momentum came to an abrupt halt. You didn't get hit? Humph. I still have a backup plan. 9 cycles of immortal refining formation, shift formation. With a wild roar, billowing true yuan condensed, and the huge formation directly shifted to cover Tianyang's head. Chapter 503. 9 Revolutions, Immortal Refining Formation. Upon hearing these words, Tianyang's expression changed slightly. It's this formation? Tianyang had made countless guesses about Han Tianpeng and Han Tianxiong's methods. Formations were undoubtedly the most likely. However, he did not expect it to be the 9 Revolutions, Immortal Refining Formation. 10,000 years ago, the 9 Revolutions, Immortal Refining Formation was extremely famous. Whether it was for eradicating internal enemies or exterminating the demon clan, it had made great contributions. This was because the 9 Revolutions Immortal Refining Formation was a legendary rank 5 formation. It was comparable to a Sea of Soul Realm Battle Formation. Haha, are you afraid now? Tianyang, you dared to humiliate the City Lord Mansion of Gold Star City and cheat us of 1.5 million upper spiritual stones. You should have expected this day to come. Han Tianpeng laughed loudly. Han Tianxiong, who was beside him, also laughed coldly. The two of them held the formation map in their hands and were in the safest place. No matter how strong the 9 Revolutions immortal refining formation was, it was just a bunch of formation patterns. To the two masters of the formation, it was completely ineffective. However, to Tianyang, this was extremely terrifying. Rank 5 formation. With your strength, it's impossible to set it up. Even if you rely on the formation map prepared beforehand, it's still the same. Tianyang stood in the middle of the 9 Revolutions immortal refining formation and looked indifferently at the two people standing in the air. Hearing this, Han Tianxiong and Han Tianpeng's faces darkened. They snorted coldly. So what? We can still kill you. In the next moment, Han Tianxiong channeled his true yuan and charged forward. The 9 Revolutions immortal refining formation instantly erupted with an unparalleled xinguang that blasted towards Tianyang. If this is the real 9 Revolutions immortal refining formation, I might have a headache. Looking at the violent rays of light that came from all directions, Tianyang smiled faintly. However, this incomplete formation is not enough to deal with me. In the next moment, Tianyang punched out. 108 Dragon Chi dragons formed, and the power of the true dragon body was completely unleashed. Boom! With a single punch, the surroundings were annihilated, the space shattered, and all beasts submitted. Countless vicious beasts prostrated themselves on the ground. And in the sky, Tianyang punched out, shattering this beam of light. Immediately after, 108 Dragon Chi dragons instantly shot out, turning into 108 huge fist prints and blasted towards the countless rays of light. Boom, 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 boom. Countless attacks exploded, and many of the dragon aura dragons were also shattered by the counterattack. However, the remaining dragon aura dragons did not dissipate. Instead, they charged directly towards Han Tianxiong and Han Tianpeng in the sky. What? This Tianyang is actually so powerful. Seeing this, Han Tianxiong and the others' faces changed drastically. They looked at the dozens of Dragon Chi dragons that were charging towards them. Although they were powerful, they would definitely die if they were hit. Damn it! 9 Revolutions, immortal refining formation, 9 sword radiance. Han Tianxiong snorted coldly. The true essence in his body surged out once again and was injected into the array diagram. Countless array runes shone brightly as 9 rays of sword light shot out. Bang! 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 The dozens of Dragon Chi dragons and the 9 rays of sword light collided violently. The dragons roared, and the sword light flashed. Seeing this, Tianyang's eyes narrowed slightly. There are even 9 rays of sword light? It seems that the 9 Revolutions immortal refining array is not too badly damaged. Tianyang muttered to himself. At this time, the remaining dragon aura dragons had already been shattered by the 9 rays of sword light. The remaining 3 rays of sword light charged towards Tianyang fiercely. Haha, Tianyang, this is the treasure of my Mountain River sect. It was a famous existence 10,000 years ago. Isn't it easy to deal with a mere Dao Fire Realm cultivator like you? Give me your life. Han Tianxiong laughed maniacally. His true essence flowed rapidly and continuously into the remaining 3 rays of sword light. They directly pierced through the space and charged towards Tianyang. Each of the 3 rays of sword light contained Han Tianxiong's control of the power of space and his understanding of ultimacy. Its power was enough to easily kill a Dao Fire Realm cultivator at the 3rd heaven. Of course, that was referring to an ordinary Dao Fire Realm cultivator at the 3rd heaven. After so many years, the problem with the 9 rays of sword light still hasn't been eliminated. Because it's an incomplete version, it's even worse. Looking at the 3 rays of sword light, Tianyang shook his head and sighed. Hearing this, Han Tianxiong was slightly stunned. Then, he snorted coldly. Stop pretending. Then, the speed of the 3 rays of sword light became even faster. Whoosh! With a loud sound, the 3 rays of sword light arrived in front of Tianyang. Ha ha ha! I like to see how you're going to block it now. Han Tianxiong mocked. The 3 rays of sword light exploded with supreme power and fiercely suppressed Tianyang. At this time, Tianyang sighed softly and said, "This is my dark history." In the next moment, a ray of sword light shot out from Tianyang's finger and directly attacked the 3 rays of sword light. It didn't push the true origin to the extreme, so it wasn't condensed enough. Its power was focused on sharpness, so it wasn't flexible enough. Unfortunately, it was magnified by the incomplete version. This kind of sword technique shouldn't appear in this world in the first place, okay? Tianyang roared. In the next moment, the ray of sword light suddenly exploded with a terrifying ray of sword light and directly tore the space apart. Seeing this, Han Tianpeng was instantly horrified. Han Tianxiong's expression also changed drastically. However, this was not the end. The closer it got to the 3 rays of sword light, the more powerful the ray of sword light became. In the next moment, it violently shot out like a sword from the heavens. Boom! The 3 rays of sword light were almost like paper and were torn into pieces by the ray of sword light. However, after destroying the 3 rays of sword light, the ray of sword light showed no signs of slowing down and ruthlessly attacked Han Tianxiong again. What? Han Tianxiong's expression changed drastically. Seeing this, Tianyang laughed coldly. You dare to use someone else's dark history to show the person involved. You really have guts. That's right. The 9 sword light in the 9 revolutions immortal refining formation was Tianyang's masterpiece from 10,000 years ago. At that time, Tianyang was only a slightly stronger Sea of Soul Realm sword cultivator. When he was invited, he created a sword technique that could be activated by the formation and integrated it into the formation. The 9 Revolutions Immortal Refining Formation was a collection of the creations of countless experts similar to Tianyang. It was no wonder that it was so powerful. The 9 sword light that Tianyang created was also a powerful Sea of Soul Realm sword technique that could shock the world. However, fate made fools of people. Not long after, Tianyang directly became a sword emperor. Who knew how many sword techniques stronger than the 9 sword light he could create? However, the 9 revolutions immortal refining formation had already been completed. Tianyang could only grieve as he faced this hero who had killed the demon. It was not easy for him to not see this thing. In the end, 10,000 years later, this Han Tianxiong was still showing off in front of him. And it was a pirated version. If this could be tolerated, what else could be tolerated? Go back to the underworld and repent. Tianyang roared angrily. Seeing this, Han Tianping's expression changed drastically. As for Han Tianxiong, he was completely terrified. This move had a terrifying power that was enough to severely injure him. After all, this was a move that Tianyang made in anger. Although he did not use any martial arts techniques, the power was just as strong. There's no other way. I can only use that move. Han Tianxiong's mind raced. In the next moment, his heart sank. A mouthful of flames shot out from his hand and engulfed the ray of sword light. The flames were monstrous like the sun in the sky. Seeing this, Tianyang's pupils constricted slightly as he recognized the origin of the flames. Chapter 504. Buri Heavenly Flames. It was a natural treasure, a 4th-level spiritual fire. It absorbed the power of the sun and formed underground lava. It was not easy to find it, not to mention resisting the terrifying power of the flame and absorbing it as his own. Buri Heavenly Flames, manipulating the sun. Although it was a bit exaggerated, one could see its power. Legend had it that those who mastered the Buri Heavenly Flames could borrow the power of the sun. You can actually use the Buri Heavenly Flames before me. This is a trump card that even my big brother doesn't know about. Tianyang, you are indeed strong. Han Tianxiong looked coldly at Tianyang. The golden Buri Heavenly Flames burned all over his body, and the power of the sun flowed into his body. The true yuan that he had consumed to use the 9 revolutions immortal refining formation and the 9 sword radiance was now being recovered crazily by the power of the sun. Legend has it that the Buri heavenly flames can borrow the power of the sun. It seems that the legend is true. Tianyang said indifferently. Spiritual fires were extremely rare, and the Buri heavenly flames, which were produced in a desperate place, were even rarer. As a result, some abilities had become legends due to the passage of time. During the inner yard competition, Tianyang disdained to devour Fire King Zhao Wuji's spiritual fire. However, this 4th-level spiritual fire, the Buri heavenly flames, Tianyang would be crazy if he let it go. Of course it's true. Han Tianxiong laughed loudly. The golden Buri heavenly flames on his body grew stronger and stronger, and the true yuan in his body was completely recovered. The power of the sun was still strengthening Han Tianxiong's body. While recovering, it was also strengthening Han Tianxiong's aura. At this moment, Han Tianxiong's aura was constantly rising. In terms of strength, he was not inferior to an ordinary 1st-level C of Soul Realm. The power of the sun, the body of the sun, although the body of the sun that I have displayed is not even 1/10,000th of the legendary body, it is more than enough to kill you. Han Tianxiong threw his head back and roared. The power of the sun surged into his body, causing his aura to soar to the limit. The next moment, an extremely ferocious and rough armor appeared on his body, together with the sword soul armor that Han Tianxiong was already wearing. He looked even more powerful. I originally planned to use this move against experts like Jun Aoyang and Yi Qingyu. However, your strength isn't weak either. Originally, I only wanted to use the 9 revolutions immortal refining array to deal with you. But now, you will die in the hands of my son Body. Han Tianxiong laughed maniacally. He looked at the Tianyang in front of him with disdain, as if the Tianyang in front of him had become a toy that he could trample on as he wished. Ever since Han Tianxiong had obtained the Buri heavenly flame, he had been in the limelight. He had never met a worthy opponent. He had only come to the Great Void secret realm to gain experience. Now that he had suffered such a huge setback at the hands of Tianyang, Han Tianxiong could not take it anymore. He wanted to kill Tianyang. Oh, a mere sun body. It will be difficult for you to kill me. Tianyang laughed lightly. Hearing this, Han Tianxiong's face darkened. He immediately charged out. Brat who doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth die. Han Tianxiong roared angrily. The Buri heavenly flame condensed into a huge longsword. The sword soul armor provided great power, and the sun body exploded with shocking light. In the next moment, the sword slashed out. Boom! This slash seemed to be able to split the mountains and rivers. A mountain that was dozens of miles high was slashed into dust by this slash. However, Tianyang seemed to be taking a stroll. He moved a foot to the left and easily dodged the slash. I didn't hit you. However, I only let you live for a few seconds. Now it's time for you to die. Han Tianxiong's eyes flashed with surprise. Then, he picked up the huge sword again and charged towards Tianyang. Earth upper class martial technique, Sun Moon Slash. Han Tianxiong roared angrily. The Buri heavenly flame transformed into a huge golden sword that shone brightly. He slashed out again. Seeing this, Tianyang smiled and moved another foot to the side, easily dodging the attack. You missed twice in a row. I think you should stop using your sword. Embarrassing, Tianyang said with an infuriating smile on his face. Hearing this, Han Tianxiong's face darkened even more. He thought that after he used the Buri heavenly flame, even if Tianyang did not immediately submit to him, he would definitely be beaten to a pulp. The result? He used all his strength in both slashes, but he could not even touch a hair on Tianyang's head. Once or twice, it's just luck. Again, Sun Moon Slash. Han Tianxiong snorted coldly and slashed out again. However, at the moment of this slash, Tianyang seemed to be able to predict the future. He moved 3 feet to the right and perfectly dodged the slash. What? Seeing this, Han Tianxiong was completely shocked. Could Tianyong really predict the future? His slash had completely locked onto Tianyong, but he still could not hit him. That's the third slash. Can you do it? After Tianyong said that, his shock turned into rage. Bastard, how dare you humiliate me like this? I'll tear you to pieces. Han Tianxiong roared angrily. In the next moment, he attacked again. The huge flaming sword in his hand suddenly exploded with an incomparably terrifying light. This light seemed to illuminate the entire world. The light of the sun was overshadowed. The power of the sun was constantly released and gathered in the sword. Not far away, countless people looked up in shock. Seeing the sword that was as dazzling as the sun, their hearts were filled with awe. Who was the one who unleashed this sword technique? Jun Aoyang and Yi Qingyu were not here. Seeing this, Tianyong's eyes narrowed slightly. He was now in the 9 revolutions immortal refining formation. Coupled with this slash, his situation was extremely bad. Peerless Earth-class martial skill, Heavenly Dragon slaying sword. Han Tianxiong roared. This time, an incomparably surging aura erupted and locked onto Tianyong. This time, Tianyong definitely could not dodge. In other words, this slash could hit Tianyong even if he fled to the ends of the earth. Tianyong could only meet force with force. This is not good, Tianyong frowned slightly. The True Dragon Core's 108 True Dragon patterns were released. The True Dragon's power circulated, and the divine desolate sky spirit art stirred up countless true yuan. If nothing unexpected happened, this slash was enough to kill the Purple Sun Sect's ancestor, Sheng Pingshi, who was at the peak of the first level of the Sea of Soul Realm. In fact, he might even be stronger. No choice, It's time to attack. Tianyong sighed softly. Then, facing this resplendent sword, black light surged and the annihilation spirit fire burned. Styx River Sword Attack. Chapter 505. Sky Extreme Sword Art. Third Sword, Star Burial. Tianyong roared. The divine wilderness sky spirit art in his body surged crazily, and a terrifying sword with majestic power burst out in an instant. It was as resplendent as a galaxy, but it carried the power to destroy stars. This sword was many times stronger than when he fought against the spirit of demonic chi. After so much time of tempering, this sword was no longer the same as before. Sky flames. Raging flames incinerate the heavens. Seeing this, Han Tianxiong's expression changed greatly. He roared and slashed out again. In the next moment, a galaxy-like sword light and a flame-like sword chi fiercely collided. Boom! Heaven and earth shook, the space shattered, and the billowing aftershocks spread out. The mountains under their feet collapsed, and the river changed its course. At this moment, Han Tianpeng was already scared silly. His whole body trembled as he watched the exchange between Tianyong and Han Tianxiong, and his heart was filled with fear. Han Tianpeng was naturally clear about his brother's strength, but he did not expect this. Tianyong's strength was actually able to contend with his brother, Han Tianxiong, who had displayed the sun body and whose strength had reached the peak of Sea of Soul Realm. No, it was not contending, it was suppressing. Boom! Boom! Countless explosions rang out as Han Tianxiong's heavenly flames fluctuated rapidly. However, in the face of the Star Burial Sword, all of this was just an illusion. As a sword of the sky extreme sword art, how could the Star Burial be simple? Damn it! How could this peak third Heaven Dao Fire Realm have a terrifying power that even I can't contend with? Han Tianxiong's face fell as he roared in horror. However, his blazing sky flames and sword chi were being destroyed by the Star Burial Sword with an unstoppable force. Seeing this scene, Han Tianxiong's face turned completely pale. His strongest sword could not do anything to Tianyong. Didn't that mean that this sword strike could easily kill him? Damn it! Sun Heavenly Flame, Great Sun Shield. Han Tianxiong roared. The Heavenly Flame mat rolled out and turned into a shield, blocking in front of Han Tianxiong. This move was something that even a first-level Sea of Soul Realm warrior would not be able to shake. However, All of this was just a useless struggle in the face of absolute power. Boom! The giant shield formed by the power of the sun instantly shattered, and the star burial sword only shook a little. Seeing this, Tianyang smiled. It's such a waste for this spiritual fire to be in your hands. I won't stand on ceremony then. Tianyang smiled faintly. In the next moment, the sword radiance exploded with endless light and engulfed Han Tianxiong. Ah! Han Tianxiong roared crazily. His body was cut by the sword chi. Countless wounds tore open. Unparalleled pain rushed into his mind, almost destroying his soul. No, I still have one more move. At this time, Han Tianxiong bit the tip of his tongue to wake himself up. Ignoring his serious injuries, he forcefully activated his true essence and took out a token. Senior brother Feng Yun, lend me a hand. Han Tianxiong roared. The true essence in his body burned and poured into the token. At this time, the token exploded with a terrifying light. It directly dispersed the star burial sword around Han Tianxiong and turned into a human figure, looking down at Tianyang from above. Rolling pressure was released. It was the power of a second-level C of Soul Realm Warrior. I don't care who you are. For the sake of Nie Feng Yun, a Saint Realm disciple of the Holy Land of Martial Arts, let me go, the figure said faintly. Hearing this, Tianyang's expression changed slightly, and a faint smile appeared on his face. Nie Feng Yun? That's right. Nie Feng Yun nodded and looked at Tianyang arrogantly. No matter what kind of power you come from, in front of the Holy Land of Martial Arts, you're nothing but a dog. Let him go. Otherwise, I'll let you experience the wrath of a Saint Realm disciple. Hearing this, Tianyang's expression was calm, but his heart was cold. Han Tianxiong, who was beside him, was already laughing loudly. Ha! Tianyang, aren't you very capable? In front of my senior brother Feng Yun, aren't you still a coward? If I lose to you today, it's my loss. One day, I'll take your head with my own hands. Big brother, let's go. Han Tianxiong did not care about his injured body and laughed mockingly. Then, he carried the frightened Han Tianpeng and was about to leave. At this time, Tianyang smiled faintly and reached out his hand. Boundless space energy rippled and directly blocked their path. Did I say that I'll let you go? Hearing this, Nie Feng Yun's face turned gloomy. Tianyang, you're not giving me face? Who do you think you are? Why should I give you face? Tianyang laughed lightly. Hearing this, Nie Feng Yun's face turned extremely ugly. You refuse a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit. How dare you disobey me? Nie Feng Yun, go to hell. Nie Feng Yun roared angrily. His peak second-level C of Soul Realm, True Yuan gathered and turned into a fist that fiercely blasted towards Tianyang. Upper-grade Earth Tier Martial Technique, Mountain River Seal. Stick Sword Technique, Fourth Sword, Dao, of Azura. Tianyang laughed coldly and slashed out with the stick sword. Monstrous killing intent was released. Sword light filled the sky and directly shattered Nie Feng Yun's fist. Then, the sword move did not lose momentum and destroyed Nie Feng Yun's True Yuan clone. How dare you? Nie Feng Yun's face was filled with disbelief. However, in the next moment, he turned into ashes and directly shattered. Nie Feng Yun, a Saint Realm disciple of the Holy Land of Martial Arts, was easily defeated by Tianyang just like that. Seeing this, Han Tianxiong and Han Tianpeng both trembled. Their fingers trembled as they pointed at Tianyang. You actually destroyed Senior Brother Feng Yun's clone. Senior Brother Feng Yun will definitely not let you go. You don't have to worry about that. Tianyang smiled faintly. In the next moment, he slashed out with his sword again and killed Han Tianxiong and Han Tianpeng. Tianyang also took out the origin source of the Buri Heavenly Flames. Looking at the struggling golden flame in his palm, Tianyang smiled faintly. The power of a level 4 spiritual fire is indeed extraordinary. The Annihilation spiritual fire is still not comparable. Then, Tianyang formed a hand seal and the Devouring Heaven seal gathered. The devouring power exploded and sucked the Buri Heavenly Flames into it. If he devoured the Buri Heavenly Flames, his strength would increase exponentially. Thousands of miles away, in a holy land of martial arts at the center of the central region. Crack! An exquisite teacup was crushed. However, the hand that crushed the teacup did not have a single drop of water on it. Damn Tianyang! How dare you not give me face? You even destroyed my true Yuan clone. Go! Investigate. Find out Tianyang's identity and find him. I want him to die a horrible death. Nie Fengyan roared. P.S. Happy Mid-Autumn Festival, everyone. I'm wondering if I can update 4 times today. Chapter 506. Spiritual fire was extremely precious and rare. It was already a great fortune for an ordinary person to encounter one. If one wanted to refine it, besides great luck, one also needed great strength. Otherwise, the backlash from the spiritual fire would be enough to burn one to ashes. Previously, Tianyang was able to discover the existence of the spiritual fire of destruction in the northern wilderness mystery region purely by luck. Otherwise, he would not have been able to obtain it along the way. Now that Han Tianxiong, the boy of fortune, had given him the Buri heavenly flame, Tianyang naturally accepted it without hesitation. Boom! After being swallowed by the devouring heaven seal, the Buri heavenly flame still did not stop resisting. Its previous host had just died, and now it was going to be refined into someone else's power. The Buri heavenly flame naturally had an instinctive resistance. However, feeling this resistance, Tianyang frowned slightly. This resistance doesn't seem to be from a spiritual fire that has recognized a master. Tianyang muttered to himself. He had seen many spiritual fires. Some were stubborn, some were docile, and some were stubborn. Spiritual fires that had recognized a master would not have strong resistance. However, the Buri heavenly flame's resistance was so strong that if Tianyang's cultivation was just a little bit weaker, it would directly break out of the seal. Could it be that Han Tianxiong could not suppress the Buri heavenly flame, so he used that method? Tianyang muttered to himself. Then he released his soul power and penetrated deep into the Buri heavenly flame. The Buri heavenly flame felt this extremely terrifying soul power and immediately trembled in fear. It did not dare to resist anymore. A rank 4 spiritual fire corresponded to the Tao fire realm. However, this was only a correspondence. According to the actual situation, even the weakest rank 4 spiritual fire had the strength to fight against a sea of soul realm practitioner. Amongst the 4th level spiritual flames, the Laying Sun heavenly flame was considered as one of the more powerful ones. If it was at its peak, it would be able to contend with a spirit king. However, no matter how powerful a spirit king was, in front of a sword emperor, it was nothing but trash. After being touched by Tianyang's soul power, the Buri heavenly flame was instantly terrified. Tianyang also knew everything about the Buri heavenly flame. It turned out that the Buri heavenly flame was encountered by Han Tianxiong by chance. At that time, the Buri heavenly flame was just a flame that had just formed. Han Tianxiong naturally wanted to devour and refine it. Unfortunately, the Buri heavenly flame was so powerful that it almost burned Han Tianxiong to ashes. However, the Buri heavenly flame also suffered some damage. Hence, Han Tianxiong and Buri heavenly flame, and Buri heavenly flame. And Han Tianxiong used the Buri heavenly flame, the Buri heavenly flame. However, Tianyang was able to tell with a single glance that there was a deeper meaning behind it. The Laying Sun heavenly flame was a miraculous item of heaven and earth. It was definitely not something that a mere half-step sea of soul realm warrior could suppress. Even if Sky Sun didn't make a move, the Laying Sun heavenly flame would definitely grow up and devour him. Moreover, the Buri heavenly flame did not even have Han Tianxiong's soul imprint. It was simply a half-free flame. At that time, Han Tianxiong would die from his own flame. This Han Tianxiong is really stupid. He was fooled by a flame. It was originally a half-free flame. Now, I'm going to refine it into a flame of slavery. No wonder it has such a strong resistance. Tianyang chuckled. Then, He looked at the Buri heavenly flame. A ray of light flashed in his eyes. The Buri heavenly flame was born as a flame, but it had such a strong soul power. In the future, it might be able to cultivate the legendary flame body. At that time, the Buri heavenly flame's strength would not be as weak as it was today. If Tianyang rashly devoured it, there might be a risk of a backlash. Since that's the case, there's no need for your soul power to exist. Tianyang snorted coldly. Rolling soul power was released and crushed toward the Buri heavenly flame. The Buri heavenly flame's body trembled as if it had sensed some danger. It suddenly broke through the fear in its heart and began to fluctuate. Flames were released and attacked Tianyang. However, Tianyang's soul power easily destroyed all of the Buri heavenly flame's attacks. The moment the Buri heavenly flame released its attack, Tianyang's soul power invaded the origin of the Buri heavenly flame. The devouring heaven seal's devouring power was fully activated. Boom! The enormous devouring vortex opened and directly swallowed the Buri heavenly flame. In the process, the Buri heavenly flame's last bit of soul power was also erased. Apart from its powerful strength, it had returned to its original appearance. The soul power that had schemed against Han Tianxiong was completely obliterated. Only the most basic soul power was left. In the next moment, Tianyang opened his mouth and directly swallowed it. The divine desolate heavenly spirit art circulated at an extremely fast speed. Rays of golden light were released and firmly captured the origin fire seed of the Buri heavenly flame. The current Buri heavenly flame was in its initial state, so it naturally did not have much resistance. Under the rapid circulation of the divine desolate heavenly spirit art, the Buri heavenly flame was completely devoured and planted with Tianyang's soul imprint. It had completely become Tianyang's spiritual fire. That's right. Legend has it that the Fire Emperor of ancient times controlled 7 spiritual fires. The strongest one was only on par with my Buri heavenly flame. I don't cultivate the Tao of fire. In terms of spiritual fire control, I'm close to the Fire Emperor. I'm really too powerful. Tianyang smiled slightly. Then, he was about to use the Buri heavenly flame to test its power. At this moment, an unforeseen event occurred. The divine desolate heavenly spirit art instantly erupted with a brilliant light. The annihilation spiritual fire's origin fire seed also began to fluctuate violently at this moment. It spread towards the Buri heavenly flame's origin fire seed. The Buri heavenly flame's origin fire seed was the same. It released streams of origin energy and swept towards the annihilation spiritual fire seed. What's going on? Tianyang's expression changed slightly. He had never heard of a rebellion after devouring 2 spiritual fires. If that was the case, wouldn't the Fire Emperor have already self-destructed and died? How could he devour as many as 7 spiritual fires? Boom! A terrifying sound came from Tianyang's body. Tianyang's face instantly paled, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. The strange thing was that a black gold flame suddenly spread out from the mouthful of blood and burned it completely. What the hell? Tianyang's expression changed drastically. At this moment, the strange movement in his dantian erupted once again. Boom, boom, boom. Countless sounds rang out. It was as if countless bombs had detonated in Tianyang's body. His blood and qi churned, and his entire body trembled. At this moment, Tianyang had an idea and immediately activated the divine desolate heavenly spirit art. The golden light that belonged to the divine desolate heavenly spirit art was released and wrapped around the 2 fire seeds. The 2 fire seeds also instantly quieted down. Following that, puff. Chapter 507. Black and Gold Flames. Looking at the flames in his dantian that did not belong to the spiritual annihilation fire or the Buri heavenly flames, Tianyang was immediately dumbfounded. What was going on? If not for the fact that he could sense that this black and gold flame was still under his control, Tianyang would have thought that something had entered his dantian. That's not right. The spiritual annihilation fire is gone, and so is the Buri heavenly flames. Then, wouldn't this be... Tianyang's expression changed slightly. He thought of the previous incident where the spiritual annihilation fire and the Buri heavenly flames had corroded each other. His face darkened slightly. If that was the case, then it could be explained. However, why would these two flames fuse together? This divine desolate heaven spirit art was clearly created by me. In the end, I didn't even understand the profoundness within it. Tianyang chuckled. He thought of the situation where the change disappeared after he desperately circulated the divine desolate heaven spirit art. It was very easy for him to deduce. The fusion of the two spiritual fires was because of the divine desolate heaven spirit art. Forget it. Let's try it first. The fusion of a fourth and third level spiritual fire. Don't divide it evenly, Tianyang muttered to himself. Following that, his finger moved slightly and a black and gold flame appeared in his hand. The raging flames burned under the sun. However, that dazzling light seemed to cover the sun. Staring at this flame, the sun seemed to be nothing. It looks pretty good on the outside. Now, let's test its power. Tianyang chuckled and looked at the bare stone mountain that was created by the battle between Han Tianxiong and himself. He casually threw it. This flame did not contain Tianyang's true essence. It was only the most basic flame power. He could not help but wonder how powerful the merged flames would be. Boom! An extremely terrifying explosion sounded. In the next moment, the entire space seemed to be distorted by the high temperature that was released in an instant. The entire stone mountain was wrapped in the black and gold flames. Following that, the black and gold flames automatically absorbed the power of the sun to strengthen themselves and directly devoured the stone mountain. 1,000-meter-tall mountain had actually been swallowed up by the pure power of the heavenly sun's fire. This power, even if the 7 flames of the fire emperor of the spiritual sea realm were to attack at the same time, it wouldn't be more than this. Tianyang was dumbfounded as he stared at the black gold flames. The Fire Emperor was an existence that could be said to have reached the pinnacle of the Fire Tao. However, Tianyang, who didn't cultivate the Fire Tao at all, had actually used flames at the level of the Fire Emperor. If Fire Emperor was still alive, he might have been angered to death by Tianyang. You can't bully me like this. However, Tianyang regained his composure in the next moment. With a wave of his right hand, the black gold flames returned to his palm. In terms of power, this spiritual fire is not much weaker than a peak rank 4 spiritual fire. I can even feel that this black gold flame has yet to reach its peak. It's a pity that the consumption of this spiritual flame is quite large. I'm unable to take it out and use it individually. In the future, I can't casually take it out to smash people. Tianyang muttered to himself. This was just a pleasant surprise. Although Tianyang was excited, he wasn't so excited that he lost his mind. His sword skills, fist skills, and physical strength were all stronger than the black gold flames. Therefore, Tianyang wasn't so happy that he couldn't extricate himself from it. However, this flame definitely doesn't exist in Sky Continent. Let me give it a name. How about the Heavenly Annihilation Flame? Tianyang smiled gently. After confirming his plan, he kept the Heavenly Annihilation Flame back into his body. Then, Tianyang put away the remains of the 2 Han brothers who had died on the ground and soared into the sky, heading towards the center of the Great Void Secret Realm. After Tianyang left, a black-clothed man quietly arrived at this place. When he saw the corpses of Han Tianxiong and Han Tianpeng, his expression didn't change. Tianyang, what did you do to deserve to be ranked above me? Yi Qingyu? It's a pity you left. Otherwise, the first place would be mine. Yi Qingyu of the Sky Demon Cult. Outside, Tianxiong and Tianpeng are both dead. Ku Shan exclaimed in disbelief when he saw the 2 men who had been removed from the top 1,000 of the Hunter leaderboard. Hearing that, Tai Wuji, who had been watching from the side, immediately laughed gloatingly. There are countless dangers and fortuitous encounters in the Great Void Secret Plane. Although your nephew's talent is not bad, there's still a risk of dying. Young Master Tian is still the best. He easily took the first place, while Jun Aoyang, who's in second place, is still more than 3,000 behind him. Tai Wuji laughed. Kushan hadn't given him any face before, and now that Kushan's juniors were done for, Tai Wuji naturally had to gloat. However, Kushan's expression turned sour when he heard that. What are you saying, Lord of Swordstar City? Could Tianpeng and Tianxiong have been killed by Tianyang? I didn't say that. Tai Wuji shrugged and turned to look at the hunter leaderboard again. Aya, young Master Tian, is truly amazing. He's now left Jun Aoyang behind by 4,000. This Yiqing Yu isn't bad either. He's about to take the second place. Kushan's expression darkened when he saw Tai Wuji's nonchalant attitude, and he clenched his teeth so hard that they almost shattered. Oof. Who doesn't know about the conflict between Tianyang and our Tianpeng and Tianxiong? Tianpeng and Tianxiong died not long ago, and Tianyang's point sword. He must have killed them. He must have killed them and taken their points. When the Great Void Secret Realm ends in 3 months, Tianyang will be dead for sure. Kushan roared inwardly. However, no one cared about his opinion at the moment. Everyone's eyes were focused on the hunter leaderboard. Those who could make it to the top 100 of the hunter leaderboard were undoubtedly geniuses among geniuses. Those who could make it to the top 10 were all prodigies. If they didn't die, they would become extremely powerful beings in the future. They might even have to kneel down and lick their boots. This Tianyang is truly amazing. Even now, the gap between him and Jun Aoyang hasn't been closed by much. Jun Aoyang isn't bad either. To be able to collect more than 2,000 points in such a short time, his strength is also extremely strong. Heavenly Demon Cult's Yiqing Yu is also very powerful. He was in 3rd place at the beginning, and now he's almost at 2nd place. Everyone was discussing. Naturally, they were talking about the top 3. However, they wouldn't let go of some outstanding geniuses either. Outstanding, but not outstanding geniuses might not be accepted by the major factions, but these Sea of Soul Realm experts also had the qualifications to accept them as disciples. If they accepted a genius disciple, they would also be honored when they matured in the future. Inside the Great Void Secret Realm, Tianyang's expression changed slightly, and he stopped in midair. In his hand, the mini-sword suddenly burst out with brilliant light, turning into a huge road map. Chapter 508. The Great Void Emperor's Land of Inheritance. Tianyang looked at the mini-sword in his hand, and his expression froze. He knew that the reason why the Great Void Mystery Realm had been open for so many years was because of the Great Void Emperor's inheritance. Countless people had rushed in because of this. And this mini-sword, which came from the Great Void Divine Stone, suddenly had a road map. It was hard not to associate it with the Great Void Emperor's inheritance. However, looking at this distance, even with the speed of the Void Treading Secret technique, it would take at least 10 days to get there. Let's just observe along the way. Tianyang muttered to himself. The Great Void Mystery Realm was extremely vast. It was not inferior to some of the realms. He was now in the southern part of the Great Void Mystery Realm, and the Land of Inheritance was in the central part of the Great Void Mystery Realm. It would be extremely difficult to get there. Let's take one step at a time. For now, let's take a rest. Tianyang looked at the gradually darkening sky and nodded slightly. He found a cave, entered it, cleaned it, and rested. The killing and fighting in the Great Void Mystery Realm, which had been fighting for the entire day, gradually quieted down as night fell. The night was silent. The next day, Tianyang woke up from his cultivation. The surrounding heaven and earth spiritual qi was absorbed into his body. The heaven and earth spiritual qi in the Great Void Mystery Realm is extremely rich. It is extremely difficult to improve Tian Yuan and Zhen Yuan. But in just one night, I improve a little. I don't need 3 months. I only need 2 months to break through to the peak of half-step Sea of Soul Realm. Tianyang chuckled. He then stood up and walked out of the cave. The mini-sword was still emitting a light that resembled a road map. Tianyang thought for a moment and put it away. There were countless hidden dragons and crouching tigers in the Great Void Mystery Realm. The number of geniuses was definitely not limited to the hunting list. His roadmap whether it was the real Great Void inheritance or an ordinary map of the Great Void Mystery Realm, was extremely valuable. If others saw it, it would be difficult to avoid another robbery. Tianyang did not like trouble. There's actually someone here. At this moment, two voices suddenly sounded from the entrance of the cave. One of them was arrogant, while the other was incomparably arrogant. Get the hell out of there. This place has been requisitioned by our Sword Star Cities Hu clan. The two young men said arrogantly. They did not take Tianyang, who had just finished cultivating, seriously at all. Tianyang's expression turned cold when he heard that. He had heard Tai Wuji mention the Hu clan of Sword Star City before. It seemed to be a powerful clan. However, Tianyang, could even wipe out the Nangang clan. Could it be that he would be afraid of a Hu clan? What if I don't leave? Tianyang said indifferently. He didn't even have the intention to walk out of the cave and look at the two people. Hearing this, the two people's faces darkened slightly. You're not going to cooperate? Let me tell you, I am Sword Star Cities Hu clan's second young master, Hu Dong. This is my big brother, Hu Tianya. Both of us are at the peak of half-step C of Soul Realm. If you don't come out, are you courting death? Hu Dong sneered. At this moment, Tianyang also spread out his soul power and looked at the two. The one who looked a little younger was Hu Dong. His face was somewhat handsome, and his clothes were abnormally luxurious. However, the words he said were not so pleasant to the ears. The one who was a little older was Hu Tianya. The moment he saw Hu Tianya, Tianyang's eyes narrowed slightly. He could see that this person's cultivation was much stronger than Han Tianxiong and Han Tianpeng. He was only a step away from the first level of C of Soul Realm. Courting death? However, although Hu Tianyang's cultivation was somewhat out of Tianyang's expectations, Tianyang did not put him in his eyes at all. If you want to die, then come in. Hearing this, Hu Dong's face immediately darkened. Courting death, Hu Dong roared angrily. The true essence of half-step C of Soul Realm in his body instantly erupted. True essence condensed in his hand, and he punched out. Earth tier, high-grade martial skill, rock-breaking fist. Boom, 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 boom. A violent true essence fiercely collided with the mountain wall, and the entire mountain wall instantly collapsed. Moreover, as the mountain wall collapsed, the aura of this fist became even stronger. When the last mountain wall collapsed, it would be the day this rock-breaking fist bombarded Tianyang's body. You have too much strength, but not enough agility. This fist of yours can only be used to break rocks. Tianyang smiled faintly, looking at the shattered mountain wall and the rock-breaking fist that was madly smashing towards him. He punched out. Dragon King Divine Fist. 108 Dragon Chi dragons roared out. The Dragon King's roar resounded through the clouds. Surging dragon power was released and fiercely collided with the rock-breaking fist. Boom! The entire cave began to tremble. In the next moment, the cave directly collapsed, and Tianyang's fist had already shattered everything in front of him. The 108 dragons did not suffer any damage, directly breaking through the obstacles in front of them and bombarding Hu Dong's body. Bang! Pooh! A mouthful of blood spurted out, and Hu Dong's body flew out like a cannonball. Many of his ribs were broken, and from his mouth, many black and purple clots of blood were even spat out. It was obvious that under this punch, Hu Dong had already suffered heavy injuries that could not be more serious. What? Seeing this scene, Hu Tianyang's expression changed greatly. How is this possible? He was very clear about his brother's strength. Even if he faced a first-level C of Soul Realm Elder in the family, he would be able to withstand a few moves. However, he was directly sent flying by this mysterious person and suffered heavy injuries. Thinking of this, Hu Tianyang also regretted. If he had known this would happen, he would not have been so arrogant. The person inside was obviously about to leave after finishing his cultivation, but in the end, his arrogance had instead caused the other party to be unhappy. Looking at this strength at the very least, it was at the level of the top 10 on the hunting list. You want to kill me with just this little strength? You should take a look at yourself first. Tianyang looked at Hu Dong, who had heavily crashed into the mountain peak and cave in an extremely deep hole and curled his lips. Hearing this, Hu Qianyao's expression also turned ugly. Because the cave had collapsed and smoke was lingering, he could not see Tianyang's face clearly. "Sir, my brother only said a few words, and you directly attacked. Isn't that bad? Behind us is the Hu clan," Hu Qianyao said coldly, directly bringing out his own background. He did not believe that in the southern part of the Great Void Secret Realm, there was anyone who was not afraid of the Hu clan. In the eastern part of the central region, there were a total of 4 large teleportation points. One of them was Sword Star City, and Sword Star City corresponded to the southern part of the Great Void Secret Realm. In other words, the forces in Sword Star City could still be used if they moved to the southern part of the Great Void Secret Realm. Therefore, Hu Qianyao was so arrogant, thinking that Tianyang would definitely submit to the Hu clan's power. Hu clan? Hearing this, Tianyang chuckled. Just when Hu Qianyao thought that this person was afraid, a fist suddenly appeared from the smoke. "I've even beaten up Tai Wuji. Why would I be afraid of your Hu clan?" Bang! Chapter 509. Bang! Hu Qianyao also crashed into the same mountain as Hudong. However, this time, because his fist was close to his face, Hu Qianyao was deeper than Hudong. What? Seeing this scene, the surrounding spectators who had been silent all this time were shocked. Hudong and Hu Qianyao were both defeated by this kid. Where did this person come from? At this moment, Tianyang, who was floating in the sky, suddenly looked to the side and said indifferently, "If you don't want to die, hurry up and get lost." Hearing this, that person immediately felt as if he had been struck by lightning and hurriedly ran away. He was also terrified. If Tianyang really attacked in anger and killed him, he would have nothing to say in the underworld. At this moment, Hu Qianyao relied on his slightly stronger cultivation and struggled to crawl out. He looked at Tianyang with a face full of fear. "Your face. You're Tianyang," Hu Qianyao said in shock. Hearing this, Tianyang chuckled. "You also know that I'm Tianyang?" Hearing this, Hu Qianyao's face immediately turned pale. Legend had it that Tianyang was lawless and did all kinds of evil. The eldest daughter of the Yin family, who had a good reputation in Sword Star City, and the helper she had invited, Uncle Lu, were dead. Han Tianxiong, who had performed dazzlingly in the last Great Void Mystic Realm and entered the Mountain River sect, who was only slightly weaker than him, was also dead. Han Tianpeng, whose status was even higher than Han Tianxiong, was also dead. As long as one came from the vicinity of Sword Star City, there was not a single person who did not know Tianyang's name. Yet, he had so stupidly chosen to provoke Tianyang. Wasn't this courting death? "Don't worry, I won't kill you yet. Now, bring your crippled brother and get over here." Tianyang revealed a brilliant smile and said with a smile. Hearing this, Hu Qianyao nodded his head while trembling. He dragged Hudong, who was embedded in the mountain wall, and dragged his heavily injured body to the front of Tianyang. At this moment, Hu Qianyao no longer had the appearance of a gorgeous young master. His face had caved in a lot, and the white robe on his body was also dyed red with blood. He was in a sorry state. Tianyang glanced at them indifferently before he turned around and said, "Follow me." Hearing those words, Hu Qianyao nodded. Not daring to make any sudden movements, he flew over as well. At this moment, the bystander who had run away suddenly poked his head out and looked at this scene in shock. Even Hu Qianyao was beaten until he followed obediently. Tianyang's strength was really too terrifying. He really wondered what kind of scene it would be if Tianyang, the #1 expert in the south of the Great Void Secret Realm, and Jun Aoyang, the #2 expert in the east of the Great Void Secret Realm. According to what this person knew, Jun Aoyang was already breaking through to the Sea of Soul Realm on the first night he stepped into the Great Void Mystery Realm. My lord, why did you bring us here?" After walking into a cave, Hu Qianyao said with a face full of fear. The surrounding dark environment scared him so much that his legs went soft. Could it be that the Tianyang had called them over to satisfy his horror fetish of dismembering corpses in the dark? Why is it so dark here? This cave is not well chosen. Tianyang frowned. Looking at the dark environment, he snapped his fingers. A wisp of black gold flame suddenly rose and lit up the entire cave. Seeing that wisp of black gold flame, Huchinya's eyes widened. He could tell that this wisp of black gold flame was definitely not ordinary. However, as far as he knew, Han Tianxiong controlled the golden-brown heavenly flame. What was this black gold flame? Come, tell me, why did you suddenly barge into my cave? Tianyang said with a chuckle. Hearing that, Huchinya's expression changed slightly. It seemed like he did not want to say anything. Seeing this, Tianyang smiled slightly. It's fine if you don't want to say it. However, my control over this flame can enter through all the pores on your body and torture every inch of your skin. Don't. I'll talk. Before Tianyang could finish speaking, Huchinya had already fallen to the ground with a plop. Just thinking about what Tianyang had said made him shudder. He felt that this flame was no weaker than Han Tianxiong's brown heavenly flame. If it entered all the pores on his body, would it burn again? That kind of feeling would definitely be excruciating. The reason why we want to go in is because we want to use that cave as a stronghold. Huchinya shouted. Hearing this, Tianyang raised his eyebrows. Stronghold? This cave had the value of being a stronghold? Come, tell me. Tianyang chuckled. Hearing this, Huchinya nodded and spilled everything like beans in a bamboo tube. It turned out that Huchinya and the others had received some news. They had discovered that there was a treasure trove of an ancient figure buried in this mountain range. This treasure trove was many times more powerful than the relics of opportunity outside, because this treasure trove had never been opened, and the owner of this treasure trove was one of the 4 great divine generals under the Taishu Emperor. The Taishu Emperor's 4 great divine generals are Azure Dragon, White Tiger, Vermilion Bird, and Black Tortoise. These 4 great divine generals each have the strength of peak 9th level C of Soul Realm. Among them, Azure Dragon Divine General was almost a step away from stepping into the Heaven Ascension Realm. According to the news, the Divine General's cave hidden in this mountain range is Zhuke Shogun's cave. Hu Qianya explained. Hearing this, Tianyang's eyes narrowed slightly. The Taishu Emperor's 4 great divine generals. Tianyang had heard of these 4 great divine generals in his previous life and knew that they were powerful. Azure Dragon Divine General was the strongest. Although he was only at peak 9th level C of Soul Realm, his battle strength was almost comparable to a cultivator who had just entered the Heaven Ascension Realm. As for Zhuke Shogun, Tianyang also had some understanding of him. He was an expert in flames and attacks, and was also an extremely powerful existence. There was actually Zhuke Shogun's cave here. Then, it must have attracted a lot of people. Indeed, apart from us, almost everyone in Swordstar City has come. I heard that little demon king Yi Qingyu and Sun Moon Sect's flame monarch Junaoyang are already on their way here, Hu Tianya said. Tianyang nodded slightly upon hearing this. This was within his expectations. However, he was more concerned about Yi Qingyu's little demon king and Jun Aoyang's flame monarch king. It had only been a little more than a day since the opening, and these 2 people already had nicknames? I don't know who came up with this, but Yi Qingyu's methods are ruthless, and his strength is just as strong. Moreover, he comes from the Heavenly Demon cult, so there's no problem with him being called Little Demon King. As for Jun Aoyang, his flames are extremely powerful, so there are people who call him Flame Monarch King. Hu Qianya said. Hearing this, Tianyang chuckled. This was quite appropriate. However, to be able to be given such a title by the public, these 2 people's strength was definitely extraordinary. What about me? Tianyang asked curiously. Hearing this, Hu Qianya hesitated for a moment. He glanced at Tianyang and said in an extremely low voice. Chapter 510. Homicidal Maniac. Upon hearing these words, Tianyang's expression changed dramatically. He could not understand why he was called a homicidal maniac. How many people had he killed in total? Because Hu Qianya stammered again. He did not dare to look into Tianyang's eyes, for fear of seeing Tianyang's furious expression. Tianyang's notoriety was widespread in the south of the Great Void Mystery Land. If his words made him unhappy, then wouldn't it be possible for him to directly kill him? Thinking of the 700 or 800 points he had and the 400 or 500 points Hu Dong had, Tianyong might really make a move in order to secure his first place. Thinking of this, Hu Qianya's body trembled even more violently. I told you to speak, so speak. Why are you trembling? Are you possessed? Tianyong said impatiently. Hearing this, Hu Qianya trembled even more violently. He could only sigh and begin to speak. It turned out that the people Tianyong had killed were not only Han Tianxiong, Han Tianpeng, Uncle Liu, and the Yin family's first Mississippi. After killing Uncle Liu, he killed them on the way. Tianyong had forgotten about them. Even if there were people who escaped, most of them had broken limbs or even lost their cultivation. Under these people's propaganda, Tianyong's image became that of a homicidal maniac. Hearing this, Tianyong remembered that he had killed others. However, seeing this, Hu Qianya trembled even more. Tianyong was really a homicidal maniac who could not even remember the people he had killed. But Hu Qianya began to speak again. Hearing this, Tianyong raised his eyebrows. But what? Because some people said that you used to be called Sword King or something. Connecting it to the current title of homicidal maniac, some people called you Azura Sword King, Hu Qianya said. However, after hearing this, Tianyong's lips curled up slightly. This name was not bad. He knew the Tao of Azura and was known as the Sword King in the Firmament territory. The title of Azura Sword King was very appropriate. Forget it. Hurry up and scram. I don't need you now. After Tianyong heard the news, he naturally lost interest in Hu Qianya. They only had murderous intent towards him, but they didn't have the intention to kill him. Tianyong wouldn't kill them. However, if these two people were still asking for a beating when they wandered in the Zhuke Shogun Cave, Tianyong would not be merciful. Good. Thank you, sir. Hearing this, Hu Qianya nodded in surprise. Then, he ran away with Hu Dong. Although he knew that with such a serious injury, it was almost impossible for him to break through to the Sea of Soul Realm in the future, it was still better than being killed by Tianyong. Tianyong didn't know that after Hu Qianya and Hu Dong ran away, they didn't even dare to enter the Zhuke Shogun Cave. They ran directly to the western part of the Great Void Secret Realm, which was tens of thousands of miles away, for fear of encountering the Azura Sword King. However, the news that the title of Azura Sword King had been recognized by Tianyong spread like wildfire. It replaced the previous title of Homicidal Maniac. Tianyong was naturally pleased with this. After hearing this news, Tianyong didn't leave immediately. Instead, he was thinking about something. According to the miniature sword, the Great Void Secret Realm most likely contains the inheritance of the Great Void Emperor. And here, the cave abode of the Vermilion Bird Divine General, one of the 4 divine generals of the Great Void Emperor, has appeared. The Azure Dragon in the east, the White Tiger in the west, the Black Tortoise in the north, and the Vermilion Bird in the south. This Zhuke Shogun Cave is in the south of the Great Void Secret Realm. Doesn't this mean that there are other cave mansions of the 4 divine generals in other places? Tianyong thought carefully. He suddenly felt that the Great Void Secret Realm wasn't as simple as a place of inheritance. If it was an inheritance, it would have been enough to pass it on to one person. Why leave others behind? If it was someone else's inheritance, it would be fine. However, the 4 divine generals' cave mansions were long-term residences. Cave mansions and inheritance were completely different. However, the Great Void Emperor's inheritance and the 4 divine generals' cave mansions existed at the same time. This was thought-provoking. The information I have is still too little. Otherwise, I would have been able to deduce most of it. Tianyong muttered to himself. Then he put down the mini sword in his hand and walked out of the cave. This mountain range was called the Vermilion Bird Mountain Range. He had learned this from Hu Qianya. As for Tianyong, he needed to use his own spiritual strength to find the Vermilion Bird Divine General's abode, east of the Great Void Secret Realm. What? We also have cave mansions of the 4 divine generals? The Azure Dragon Mountain Range? The Azure Dragon Divine General's cave mansion? F***. I came here for nothing. At this moment, Zhu Naoyang, who had just reached the border between the east and south, couldn't help but curse when he saw the message on his communication token. He had just crossed mountains and rivers to reach the border, and now he was told that there was one in his own territory? Are you King kidding me? I came here for nothing. However, the Azure Dragon Divine General doesn't really suit me. Jun Aoyang pursed his lips and turned back. He knew that the south of the Great Void Secret Realm was Qianyang's territory, and he wasn't ready to clash with Tianyang now. Although the Zhuke Shogun Cave in the south of the Great Void Secret Realm was the most suitable place for him to wield a peak grade 3 spirit fire, he was an expert in the Tao of Flames and was from the Sun Moon sect. Meanwhile, on the other side of the border, the cave mansions of the 4 divine generals have appeared in the west as well. Dressed in black, Yi Qingyu's expression twitched as he stared at the communication token in his hand. Whatever. I'm now in the south. Do your best to get the White Tiger Divine General's cave mansion. When the time comes, the Sky Demon Cult would have 2 caves and would be invincible in the Great Void Secret Realm. Yi Qingyu said. The person in the west nodded in response. I promise to do my best. Then, Yi Qingyu sneered and put away the communication token. Since I'm in the south, the Zhuke Shogun Cave is definitely mine. What a Jura, Sword King Tianyang. He's just a stepping stone for me. Yi Qingyu laughed heartily, then channeled his true yuan and headed toward the Vermilion Bird Mountains. In the north of the Great Void Secret Realm, the appearance of the Black Tortoise Cave Mansion had shaken the entire north. However, the news of these caves' appearances had only spread for a few hours and could not spread beyond the region. Therefore, apart from a few people who traveled across the region, no one else knew what was happening in other places. Meanwhile, in the Vermilion Bird Mountains, Tianyang's expression changed slightly as he stood in a spacious open space. Underground is the Zhuke Shogun Cave Mansion. However, there's actually a seal of the Great Void Emperor's power on it, and there's no way to break it for the time being. Tianyang chuckled. Then, he found a cave nearby and settled down. Staying here would be beneficial for observing the changes in the Zhuke Shogun Cave. Chapter 511. A few days passed. Tianyang was quietly cultivating in the cave. However, the Vermilion Bird Mountain Range was already filled with people. Most of them were from Swordstar City. Many of them disliked Tianyang, but there were also some who admired Tianyang even though they were from Swordstar City. Of course, Tianyang did not care whether they were praising or criticizing him. There are so many people. Tianyang looked at the scene in front of him and said calmly. Naturally, his cave could not hide anyone. Everyone knew that Tianyang lived there. Therefore, although they did not dare to disturb Tianyang, they all stayed beside him. There were even some who spent a lot of effort to open up a cave on the mountain peak beside Tianyang. There was no other reason than Tianyang. They already knew about Tianyang's eyesight during the Great Void Auction. That worthless stone was able to attract the Great Void Auction's chief steward. This showed how sharp Tianyang's eyesight was. Now, Tianyang could have lived anywhere, but he chose to live in an empty space with few beasts around. Naturally, he attracted a lot of attention. Tianyang was speechless about this. However, this was the celebrity effect. As long as he exposed his identity, there would always be a group of people sticking to him. The fire attribute aura is getting stronger. It seems that the Zhuke Shogun Cave will open soon. Tianyang's eyes flashed as he muttered to himself. Then, he took a step forward and appeared outside the cave. Seeing this, the crowd was shocked. Why did Tianyang come out? Could it be that the Zhuke Shogun Cave was about to open? At this moment, a chuckle was heard from the side. I've long heard of the Azura Sword King's illustrious reputation. Seeing you today, I can see that you are indeed powerful. The man chuckled. Then, with a slight movement, he appeared in front of Tianyang. Tianyang narrowed his eyes and scanned the man. Then, he said, Little devil Yi Qingyu? Not bad. Yi Qingyu nodded and looked at Tianyang. The Azura Sword King hasn't stepped out of his house for the past few days, yet he still occupies the first place on the hunting list. It's really enviable. I would like to try my hand and spar with you. How about it? Yi Qingyu's eyes flashed with a sinister light as he glared at Tianyang. The true essence within his body began to circulate. He was confident that as long as he made a move, Tianyang would definitely die without a burial ground. This was because he was extremely confident in his own strength. He was different from Jun Aoyang. Jun Aoyang wished that he had 48 hours a day to hunt beasts, but Yi Qingyu only spent half a day at most. The rest of his time was spent on other things. Even so, he was still able to occupy the third place on the hunting list, close to Jun Aoyang. Therefore, he was extremely confident in his own strength. Wow, Yi Qingyu actually challenged Tianyang. The Little Devil King and the Azure Sword King are going to clash. Yi Qingyu's strength is very strong. This time, he will definitely be one of the contenders for the Zhukei Shogun Cave. I wonder if the Azure Sword King's name is just an undeserved reputation. Anyway, it's definitely not an undeserved reputation. How can it be an undeserved reputation if he can hunt so many people and beasts? Didn't you see that Yi Qingyu and Jun Aoyang are still in the third and second places? Seeing Yi Qingyu's actions, a heated discussion broke out among the crowd. A battle between the strong, especially between geniuses like Tianyang and Yi Qingyu, would definitely attract their attention. Not only the strong could learn. For them, a battle between geniuses was more useful. Yi Qingyu was also eager to try. A bloody light flashed in his eyes. As long as Tianyang accepted the challenge, he would definitely be able to tear him in half. Not interested, Tianyang said lightly, then turned around and left. Now that the Zhukei Shogun Cave was about to open, only a fool would fight with him. Exposing his own strength in front of so many people, especially when the cave was about to open, was undoubtedly a foolish move. However, when he heard that, Yi Qingyu's body suddenly stiffened. The people around him were also stunned. Not interested? Doesn't that mean that he won't accept the challenge? Such a situation had happened before, but it was extremely rare. After all, this was a battle of dignity. If Tianyang didn't accept the challenge, wouldn't that mean that he admitted that he was inferior to Yi Qingyu? Suddenly, the crowd booed loudly. Yi Qingyu finally came to his senses and looked at Tianyang mockingly. What? The Azure King of Swords, Tianyang, doesn't even have the courage to fight? If that's the case, you should get out of the Zhukei Shogun Cave competition. A piece of trash like you can't do anything even if you're here. Hearing that, the crowd nodded. According to their understanding, geniuses had to be arrogant and proud. They had to accept all the challenges. However, they didn't know that such a person was just an idiot who blindly pretended to be pretentious. In the face of Yi Qingyu's mockery, Tianyang only smiled faintly. Let me fight. You're not worthy. As soon as he finished speaking, the crowd was so silent that one could hear a pin drop. Countless people looked at Tianyang in disbelief. That was the third on the hunting list, the little devil Yi Qingyu with unfathomable strength. How dare you say that he's not worthy? That was simply arrogant, presumptuous, arrogant. Yi Qingyu roared. The so-called scheming and crafty schemes were instantly destroyed by Tianyang's words. Since young, he had been astonishingly talented and dazzling. When had he ever suffered such humiliation? You're the first person to say such words to me. Yi Qingyu gritted his teeth and said in an extremely cold voice, You're also the first person to die in my hands because of one sentence. Earth-class peerless martial technique, Een Soul, Severing Claw. Yi Qingyu roared angrily. Rolling true essence gathered, and in the next moment, he charged at Tianyang. A huge claw condensed from black true essence appeared in the air and viciously grabbed at Tianyang's head. If this claw hit, Tianyang's head would definitely explode like a watermelon. This was the strength of the peak half-step C of Soul Realm. The little devil Yi Qingyu. Tianyang is finished this time. Although he's strong, this is the little devil's full strength attack. He has no way to deal with it. Everyone exclaimed. And at this moment, Tianyang's expression didn't change. He smiled coldly. A true dragon shadow that was even stronger than the 108 dragons appeared on his body. He turned around and faced the huge Een Soul Severing Claw with a punch. Roar! With one punch, dragons roared in all directions. Chapter 512. Dragon King's Divine Fist, 10,000 dragons slaughtering gods. Tianyang roared. The true dragon's dragon core that had been cultivated to the great success stage in his body erupted with dragon power, transforming into countless dragons. A dragon king as the main force, with countless dragons as support. Tianyang could easily kill Hudong without using the Dragon King's Divine Fist. If he used the Dragon King's Divine Fist, even Hu Tianya would be easily defeated. And if he used the 10,000 dragons slaughtering gods, boom! The entire Vermilion Bur Mountain range seemed to tremble. In the next moment, the entire world began to tremble rapidly. The absolute soul-breaking claw and the 10,000 dragons slaughtering gods collided fiercely. The dragon power and Chi wreaked havoc, colliding and causing countless spatial cracks. Countless people were dumbfounded when they saw this scene. It was only when someone was seriously injured by the aftermath that they came to their senses. This was not a place where they should be. How is this possible? How can my absolute soul-breaking claw be blocked so easily? Seeing that his absolute soul-breaking claw not only failed to crush Tianyang's head, but also almost exploded from Tianyang's punch, Yi Qingyu's expression changed drastically as he roared. Hearing this, Tianyang smiled faintly. If the Dragon King's Divine Fist really couldn't block it, then it would be unworthy of the title of a heaven-rank martial skill. Back then, the Dragon Sage was a figure comparable to Sword Saint Zhou Xing. If it wasn't for the fact that his strength hadn't reached the level of a Dragon Emperor, that Dragon Sage could have been titled the Dragon Emperor with the strength of the head of 10,000 dragons. How could the Dragon King's Divine Fist, which was passed down by the ancient Dragon Clan and improved by the Dragon Sage, be so simple? An ordinary Dragon King's Divine Fist was of little value to humans. To the Dragon Clan, it was a treasure among treasures. To the Dragon Clan, which had high martial talent, it was a treasure among treasures. Tianyang's dragon power was only at the level of an ordinary Dragon Clan member. However, as the true dragon's dragon core became stronger, Tianyang also understood the profoundness of the Dragon King's Divine Fist. After mastering it, it was this move, 10,000 dragons slaughtering gods. In terms of power, this 10,000 dragons slaughtering gods was not inferior to a heaven-rank martial skill. It was extremely easy to deal with this peerless earth-rank martial skill. Break! Tianyang snorted coldly. In the next moment, countless giant dragons burst forth with dazzling light and fiercely bombarded the soul severing claw. Boom! A loud explosion was heard as the absolute soul-breaking claw was directly blasted apart by this punch. In the next moment, it directly shattered Yi Qingyu's defensive martial skill and landed heavily on Yi Qingyu's body. Boom! A loud explosion that was loud enough to shatter an ordinary person's eardrums rang out. The mighty little demon king Yi Qingyu was also sent flying by this punch. Yi Qingyu's body glowed as his middle-grade spiritual armor activated. Only then did he manage to block the punch. However, the powerful impact of the punch caused the blood in Yi Qingyu's body to churn. His internal organs felt like they were on fire, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. Seeing this, the crowd was even more shocked as they looked at Tianyang with incomparable shock. Even a mighty little demon king Yi Qingyu was easily defeated by Tianyang. Didn't that mean that only Jun Aoyang, who had broken through to the first level of the Sea of Soul Realm, could possibly be Tianyang's opponent? This peak of the third level of the Dao Fire Realm was simply too powerful. I've said it before. You don't have the right to make me fight. Slowly retracting his right hand, Tianyang said indifferently. Then, he turned around and left. Yi Qingyu, who had barely stabilized his body, spat out another mouthful of blood after hearing this sentence. He was so angry that he almost fainted. He, the mighty little demon king Yi Qingyu, was actually humiliated like this. Tianyang, if I don't take revenge for this, I'm not human. Yi Qingyu roared crazily. However, Tianyang was already far away. Although he heard it, he did not care at all. To Tianyang, once a loser, always a loser. At this moment, the fire attribute spiritual chi between heaven and earth suddenly began to rapidly expand. The surrounding temperature instantly rose by quite a bit. Seeing this, the crowd's expression changed slightly. At this moment, Tianyang's mouth revealed a trace of a smile. It really came. The Zhukei Shogun Cave was about to open. Why did the fire attribute spiritual chi suddenly become so dense? The crowd was puzzled. Yiqingyu also temporarily calmed down his anger. Strangely, he released his soul power to sense the surroundings. The fire attribute spiritual chi of heaven and earth was becoming denser and denser. It was even approaching the fire attribute cultivation grounds. However, there was nothing strange in the surroundings. Legend has it that the Zhukei Shogun is extremely proficient in the fire attribute technique. Doesn't that mean that the fire attribute spiritual chi suddenly became dense because the Zhukei Shogun Cave is about to appear? Suddenly, a person's eyes lit up and said. Hearing this, the crowd's heart trembled. They hurriedly released their soul power and searched around. Boom! At this moment, an extremely terrifying sound erupted. It was even louder than the sound of Tianyang's battle with Yiqingyu. However, it seemed to come from all directions. It confused the crowd and made them unable to refute it. As for Tianyang, his expression turned serious as he looked underground. Underground, the quiet Zhukei Shogun Cave was breaking through the ground at an extremely fast speed. A pillar of fire condensed into Xinguang and shot up into the sky. In the next moment, within the pillar of fire, a towering cave appeared. Tianyang's expression changed. He immediately used the dragon roaming 9 heaven steps and rushed in. Seeing this, the crowd's expression changed greatly, especially Yiqingyu. This guy, could it be that he already knew where the Zhukei Shogun Cave would appear? Yiqingyu growled. Looking at the flames shooting up into the sky, he was a little hesitant to act. Previously, when Tianyang rushed in, it was the moment when the cave appeared. The flames did not cover the cave, but now, Yiqingyu whispered. At this moment, a person stared at the cave and the flames with wide eyes and laughed hysterically. Ha ha! The Zhukei Shogun Cave has opened. I, Zhu Mingmin, will be the first. In the next moment, that person rushed into the sea of fire. With a scream, he died an unnatural death. The others were the same. Almost everyone who stepped into the pillar of fire was burned to death. Not a single corpse was left intact. Seeing this, the crowd was even more terrified. Thinking of Tianyang's quick reaction, the crowd sighed. Tianyang's luck was too good. When the Zhukei Shogun Cave appeared, Tianyang happened to be right next to the entrance. He rushed in casually. After a full 15 minutes, the pillar of fire that could be seen in the southern part of the Great Void Secret Realm finally subsided a little. The crowd rushed in hurriedly. At this time, Tianyang had been waiting inside for a long time. This is the Zhukei Shogun Cave? Are you sure this is the cave? 15 minutes ago, Tianyang looked at the scene in front of him with a dumbfounded expression. In front of him was a huge, flaming cliff. There were 15 iron chains connected to his feet. Only by crossing the iron chains could he pass through. Chapter 5:13. You call this a cave abode? Tianyang couldn't help but curse as he looked at the iron chain bridge that was obviously a test. It was no wonder he didn't curse. Wasn't this just playing with him? Shouldn't a cave abode be a place where one could enter and take whatever they wanted? Why'd it have to be this way? You're wearing the skin of a cave abode on the outside and the heart of a test on the inside. Zhukei Shogun, you're really tough. Tianyang couldn't help but grumble. However, he still walked up. There was a unique restriction in the Zhukei Shogun Cave that prohibited flying. Otherwise, this iron chain bridge wouldn't have been set up for decoration. However, if it was just walking, it wouldn't be a problem. For practitioners, it was too easy to control their own balance. Boom! The moment Tianyang stepped on the iron chain, the hell lava underground suddenly erupted and swallowed Tianyang. F*CK. Heavenly Sun instantly raised his shield to block this wave of attack. Looking at the hell lava that left a deep scar on the mountain wall, he sucked in a breath of cold air. If this thing were to land on his body, it would be fatal. Tianyang then looked at the opposite side. The iron chain was about 50 miles long. Even if Tianyang used the dragon roaming steps, he still had to consider the smoothness of the iron chain and the attack of the hell lava underground. In other words, this small iron chain bridge not only tested his agility, but also tested his true core strength, strong reaction speed, and fast calculation ability. Otherwise, it was almost impossible to block all the hell lava with just a shield of true core strength. If this is the case, it'll be easy. Tianyang chuckled. Then, he immediately used the dragon roaming steps and rushed over. At this moment, the underground flood surged, and another wave of hell lava attacked. 30 meters ahead, that's the safe zone. Tianyang's eyes narrowed. He released the soul strength of the peak of the heavenly completion realm. His speed instantly increased, and he arrived 30 meters ahead. Moved back 15 or 25 meters. This time, both the front and the back. I can't dodge it now, but I can destroy it with a single punch. Tianyang twisted and turned on the iron chain bridge, accurately and dangerously dodging countless attacks from the lava of hell. In less than 10 minutes, he had already covered 30 miles. The hell lava would rush up once every 10 seconds. Its position and intensity were not fixed. However, what he encountered the most was the beginning and the end. In the middle, he only needed to be careful and not consume too much true essence. As for the strongest attacks, Tianyang had to draw the Styx River Sword to resist them. As for the weakest attacks, Tianyang could easily resist them with his own physical strength. However, the surrounding environment was somewhat special. It was filled with extremely dense flame power. Those who did not cultivate the way of fire would be suppressed. Of course, Tianyang had crossed the myriad Tao Divine flame, and had even crossed it 3 times. Even if he did not cultivate the way of fire, he still had a certain level of attainment, so naturally, he would not be suppressed. However, the people behind him were having a hard time. All of this meant that after grasping the rules, Tianyang wanted to pass this stage easily. This time, it's really ruthless. If a person at the second level of Sea of Soul Realm were to face it head-on, they might even die. Tianyang looked at the lava of hell gushing out from under his feet and grinned. Then he directly used the dragon roaming 9 heaven steps and exploded with extreme speed, dodging it. Although he could block it, he would have to consume a lot of true essence. If he could dodge it, he would be a fool. This is a cave residence. When Tianyang reached 45 miles, someone finally arrived. Looking at the chains, they were all dumbfounded. What the F*** CK? Is this really a cave residence? Look, that's Tianyang. He's almost at the other side. At this moment, everyone saw Tianyang 45 miles away and exclaimed in shock. Hearing this, Yi Qingyu's eyes narrowed as he looked at Tianyang. As expected, he saw Tianyang, who was only a little distance away from the second stage. Oof. You may be strong, but I, Yi Qingyu, am not weak at all. Yi Qingyu gritted his teeth and directly climbed onto one of the chains. When the others saw this, some of them were afraid of the power of the lava of hell and retreated. More people chose to climb onto a chain and rush forward. Idiots! Looking at those who did not observe for a while, Tianyang curled his lips and spat out 2 words. Then he walked forward again. At this moment, the lava of hell erupted again. Damn! What is this thing? Don't come over. My armor is gone. This thing touched me. No, bastard. How can I die here? Ah. As soon as the lava of hell appeared, many people were immediately swallowed. The lava of hell was personally set up by Zhuge Shogun. How could its power be weak? Those who were not well prepared and had low cultivation were directly swallowed and turned into skeletons in the lava of hell. Every time the hell lava swept across, dozens of people would die a violent death. Seeing this scene, many people were terrified and wanted to retreat. Yi Qingyu's eyes narrowed and his heart sank. This lava is so powerful. We have to be careful. Yi Qingyu whispered. Then his eyes moved and looked at Tianyang. A sinister light flashed in his eyes. Ha 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 ha. You are now at the end, and there is no way you can retreat. In other words, your life is in my hands. Yi Qingyu laughed loudly. Then he looked at Tianyang and raised his hand to attack. F*CK, son of a B*TCH. Tianyang's face changed. He channeled the inner yuan in his body and stretched out his hand to block the attack. At this moment, the lava of hell swept over him again. Tianyang's face changed again. Previously, he was alone and it was easy to calculate. Now that he was disturbed, Tianyang did not know how to dodge. Damn it, I can only take it head on. His inner yuan burst out and blocked the lava of hell. However, this time, Yi Qingyu, who was standing at the beginning, laughed loudly and attacked again. Let's see how you will die. Damn you. Tianyang's face was ashen as he blocked the punch. Then, he dodged the attack of the hell lava by a hair's breadth. Just as he was about to retaliate, the hell lava attacked him again. For a moment, Heavenly Sun actually entered a dilemma. If he advanced, he would definitely be attacked by Yi Qingyu. If he did not advance, he would definitely be attacked by the lava of hell. Retreat? He had already advanced 45 miles. How could he retreat so easily? Seeing this, the crowd sighed in shock. Sigh, Yi Qingyu's move is too vicious. He directly cut off Tianyang's path of advancement, but he also made it impossible for him to retreat. Yi Qingyu, on the other hand, was standing on the iron chain and laughing loudly. Chapter 514. You're the one who forced me. Tianyang's expression was cold. In the next instant, the stick's sword appeared in his hand, and he directly slashed out. Sky Extreme Sword Art, Third Sword, Star Burial. In the next instant, a resplendent sword light like a river of stars obliterated space, shattered the lava, and blocked this attack. What? Seeing this scene, Yi Qingyu's expression changed greatly. He didn't expect that at this point, Tianyang actually still had the strength to attack. Umph. So what? I only need a few more moves, and you're dead for sure. Yi Qingyu sneered. The half-step sea of soul realm true essence in his body pulsed rapidly. At this time, Tianyang sneered. You really think I'm a fool? In the next instant, light gathered in Tianyang's stick sword, and before Yi Qingyu could attack, he slashed out. Sky Extreme Sword Art, First Sword, Sky Soaring. Ignoring Yi Qingyu and blindly charging forward, the only possibility was to be heavily injured by Yi Qingyu. And if he didn't advance, he would sooner or later be swallowed by the lava of hell. Thus, Tianyang chose to strike first to gain the advantage. That sword light swept through the flames in all directions, repelling the lava of hell and ruthlessly attacking towards Yi Qingyu. Humph! Even if you attack me and injure me, so what? You can't kill me, and I can kill you at any time. Yi Qingyu ridiculed. Hearing this, Tianyang's mouth curved in a subtle arc. Are you sure? In the next instant, Sky Soaring's sword suddenly changed direction and attacked the iron chain below Yi Qingyu's feet. Moreover, after changing direction, Sky Soaring's sword speed became even more terrifying. In an instant, it broke away from Yi Qingyu's lock and rushed straight for the iron chain. Tianyang, you dare! Yi Qingyu's eyes were about to split open. Looking at Sky Soaring's sword getting closer and closer, panic welled up in his heart for the first time. In a short time, it occupied his entire mind. One had to know that once the iron chain broke, then he, Yi Qingyu, would definitely fall into the lava of hell and die a violent death. After all, the lava of hell was a tyrannical existence that could easily kill sea of soul realm experts. With their strength, it was simply impossible to block the might of hell's lava. Seeing this, those standing on the iron chain and those not standing on the iron chain all sucked in a breath of cold air from their backs straight to the top of their heads. This move was even more vicious than Yi Qingyu's. It was the best plan to kill Yi Qingyu from the very beginning. Block it. Ah! Yi Qingyu roared, the inner yuan in his body surging wildly as he tried to block Sky Soaring's sword. Black inner yuan surged wildly. But how could Sky Soaring's sword be so easily blocked? ignoring the fact that Yi Qingyu's strength was inferior to Tianyang's. Even if it surpassed Tianyang's, it was impossible for him to block Sky's soaring sword before it hit the iron chain. After all, Tianyang was using all his strength to speed up this sword. Bang! A terrifying sound rang out, and Yi Qingyu closed his eyes, showing a trace of despair. He, the young master of the Sky Demon cult, the little demon king Yi Qingyu, would actually die in a place like this. The others were also shocked. They were shocked by the little demon king's despair and shocked by Tianyang's schemes and strength. Yi Qingyu could not keep attacking Tianyang, but Tianyang's sword was too powerful, so powerful that the little demon king could not block it. Still, nothing happened for a dozen seconds after the loud sound. Yi Qingyu opened his eyes in confusion, only to find that the iron chain beneath his feet was still fine. It was the same for the others' iron chains as well. Hellish lava was still churning beneath the ground, unleashing countless powerful waves of lava, but they did not see Sky's soaring sword. Idiot! Hellish lava can't do anything to this iron chain, and I'm only at the pinnacle of Tier 3 Dao fire. How could I cut it? Your intelligence, Sai. Tianyang stood 49 miles away, snickering as he spoke to Yi Qingyu. Yi Qingyu's face turned from despair to rage at those words. You tricked me. All's fair in war. You're the one who's retarded, and you're blaming me? Tianyang snickered, not hiding the mockery on his face. The little demon king, Yi Qingyu, was being toyed around by him, toyed within the palm of his hand. That feeling, there is only one word to describe it. Awesome. Damn it. I'll kill you. Yi Qingyu roared wildly. Tianyang smiled softly at those words, and stood still as he looked at the finish line that was only a mile away. At that moment, Yi Qingyu's attack was complete. Peerless Earth-tier martial technique, Sky Demon Fist. Yi Qingyu roared wildly, his black true yuan gathering rapidly to form a frightening fist that charged at Tianyang. Tianyang, on the other hand, smiled faintly, his true dragon body pushed to its limits. At that moment, the hellish lava reached him as well. Boom! The Sky Demon Fist landed heavily on Tianyang's back, sending him flying. At that moment, the hellish lava reached him, but the little demon king was stunned. Why didn't Tianyang block the attack? Impressive, impressive. My scalp is numb from this performance. Thank you so much. Tianyang laughed loudly. The strength of the true dragon body allowed him to be fearless of the Sky Demon Fist that spanned 49 miles. On the other hand, Tianyang used the impact of the punch to fly to the other side. Yi Qingyu's face darkened when he saw that. He took a few steps back and almost fell into the abyss. Then he spat out a mouthful of blood. He had seen clearly that the hellish lava covered a large area, and Tianyang could only defend himself. However, because of his punch, Tianyang had no time to deal with the attack, and used his punch to fly to the other side. The Sky Demon Fist that he had painstakingly condensed had become the driving force that sent Tianyang forward. He hated the fact that he had suppressed his golden thread year after year, and it had become someone else's wedding dress. The little demon king spat out blood. Everyone was shocked. Yi Qingyu's face darkened when he heard that. He took a few steps back and spat out another mouthful of blood. His aura dropped to its lowest point. Everyone was thoroughly shocked when they saw that. They looked at Tianyang, who had reached the second stage, in shock. His strategy and strength were truly worthy of being called a true prodigy. Even a disciple of a martial arts holy land would not be as good as him. He had toyed with the young master of the Sky Demon cult, and even used his attack to send him to the other side. The young master of the Sky Demon cult had been toyed with by Tianyang, a genius from a third-rate faction. For a moment, countless people were shaken. They looked at Tianyang and made a decision. They must not provoke Tianyang in the future. Otherwise, they would end up like the little demon king, spitting blood from anger. Chapter 5:15. The second stage. Tianyang quietly looked at the vast expanse of whiteness in front of him. His expression was very calm. Then a voice slowly rang out. It was like a recording, without any emotion. Being able to reach the second stage shows that your reaction, calculation, movement, combat, and other comprehensive abilities have all met the requirements, or even exceeded them by quite a bit. However, this Zhukei Shogun cave contains my inheritance. If your comprehensive ability is only strong, it is far from meeting my requirements, let alone competing for my master's inheritance. A middle-aged man's voice slowly rang out. Hearing this, Tianyang's expression changed slightly. This person was undoubtedly the Zhukei Shogun. However, this inheritance? And competing for the master's inheritance? Tianyang was not surprised that the Zhukei Shogun had left his inheritance in the cave. However, the master of the Zhukei Shogun, there was no doubt that it was the Taishu Emperor. This performance in the Zhukei Shogun cave was related to the inheritance of the Taishu Emperor. If this sentence were to be heard by others, it would definitely make them go crazy. It should be known that after 10,000 years of martial arts decline, the inheritance of a great emperor was something that even a Sea of Soul Realm expert would yearn for. However, Tianyang's expression only changed slightly. The second stage is a test of your control and adaptability to the flame. Next, I will use the vermilion bird's flames to burn the body of the testee. Only after enduring for 16 hours in the vermilion bird's flames will one be able to enter the third stage. Zhukei Shogun said. Hearing this, Tianyang nodded slightly. Then, the Zhukei Shogun's voice abruptly stopped. In front of Tianyang, clusters of crimson flames suddenly ignited. This was the Zhukei Shogun's vermilion bird fire. Legend has it that the divine beast vermilion bird is good at using flames. This Zhukei Shogun has the name of the vermilion bird. It can't be a useless spearhead, right? I don't know if this vermilion bird fire is that strong. Tianyang smiled faintly, then sat down cross-legged, allowing the clusters of flames to burn his body. A burning pain appeared on Tianyang's body, but Tianyang only smiled faintly. He had experienced the pain of being burned by fire countless times. What could be more powerful than the myriad Tao divine fire? After being burned by the myriad divine fire so many times, Tianyang was naturally used to it. Of the vermilion bird fire, which was enough to make an ordinary half-step Sea of Soul Realm expert go crazy. However, although the vermilion bird's flames couldn't harm Tianyang's physical body, they could still make his true dragon body automatically circulate. Lines of true dragon patterns lit up, and the power of the true dragon flowed. Tianyang's true dragon body also improved rapidly under the burning of the vermilion bird fire. Traces of impurities turned into gas and were expelled. Tianyang's body also emitted a sparkling light, becoming stronger and stronger. This time, the Zhukei Shogun seemed to have miscalculated. The vermilion bird fire, which shocked and terrified ordinary people on Tianyang, was not a test, but a great opportunity. Damn Tianyang, how dare you trick me? At this time, Yi Qingyu, who was at the entrance of the second stage, walked in with wounds all over his body. If I break through to the Sea of Soul Realm, I can kill you with a wave of my hand. Yi Qingyu roared. At this time, the Zhukei Shogun's voice rang out again. However, it skipped the part about Emperor Taishu's inheritance. It seemed that it was a benefit for the first person to enter. The flames of the vermilion bird. Yi Qingyu's face paled slightly. He had heard of the Zhukei Shogun's reputation. The Zhukei Shogun's fire of the vermilion bird was the terrifying flame that the Zhukei Shogun used to kill its enemies in ancient times. Even if it had been weakened, with his strength, it would still be difficult for him to withstand it. However, we've already come this far. How could I back down? Wasn't it just the flames of the vermilion bird? Humph! How could I lose to that trash from a third-rate force in Tianyang? Yi Qingyu harumphed coldly and sat down with his legs crossed. Clusters of vermilion bird flames appeared on his body. Ah! Yi Qingyu's skin withered and cracked, and the true essence in his body nearly evaporated. His face twisted as he crazily roared. Meanwhile, Tianyang, who had been quietly cultivating in the distance, opened his eyes. He glanced at Yi Qingyu before looking away. The vermilion bird flame's effect of tempering one's body was extraordinary. If he didn't seize this opportunity, who knew how long it would be before he had another chance to break through his physical strength. Tianyang's goal was to break through to the peak of the true dragon body here. At this time, at the first stage, since the two prodigies, Tianyang and Yi Qingyu, had already left, the remaining people had a much easier time passing the stage. However, the best they could do was crawl a little more than 30 miles, which is a long way from Yi Qingyu and Tianyang. From time to time, someone would be swallowed by the hellish lava and fall into the endless abyss, turning into a pile of ashes. It was a shocking sight. This Azure Dragon Divine General's cave abode is indeed no ordinary cave abode. Jun Aoyang's mouth twitched as he looked at the green, maze-like cave abode in front of him. If I had known, I would have gone straight to the Zhuge Shogun Cave. Western Region, White Tiger Divine General's cave abode. Damn it, there are actually quite a few people in the Western Region who can match me, Song Wei, and even surpass me. A black-robed man looked at the people who had passed the stage with an extremely ugly expression. He gritted his teeth and said, "Young master, I might not be able to complete your mission." Northern Region, Black Tortoise Divine General's cave abode. A white-robed woman wielding an ice-cold longsword could not help but mutter to herself as she destroyed the ice puppets in front of her with a strange expression on her face. Wasn't I supposed to go to the south? Why did I get teleported to the north and even run into the Black Tortoise Divine General's cave abode? The girl could not help but go crazy. She was looking for her master. In the end, she and her master were separated by tens of thousands of miles. How was she supposed to find him? Behind the girl, countless people looked in horror at the girl who had entered and exited the first stage as if no one was there. Their hearts trembled. They had used all their strength to kill these ice puppets, but to no avail. They had barely managed to kill a few dozen of them. But in the end, they were as weak as paper in the hands of this girl. As expected of the prodigy, who ranked 4th on the hunting list, Ling Yuhan. Zhuge Shogun Cave, 2nd stage. 6 hours had passed. The vermilion bird flames burning all over Tianyang's body had also reached a peak state. In the next moment, Tianyang's eyes suddenly opened. Immediately, 108 true dragon tattoos appeared on his body, transforming into a true dragon that soared into the sky and roared. Roar! A single roar intimidated the heroes in all directions, causing countless geniuses to tremble. True Dragon Physique Peak. Chapter 516. Another 16 hours passed. The multicolored light on Tianyang's body slowly receded. His true dragon body, which seemed to have transformed into a flawless body, gradually returned to its original appearance. Although his true dragon body had reached its peak, it did not mean that his physical body had reached its limit. Therefore, after cultivating his true dragon body to its peak, Tianyang did not immediately enter the 3rd stage. Instead, he cultivated for another 16 hours. At this time, the effect of the vermilion bird fire was almost negligible. Only then did he end his cultivation. Before my true dragon body reached great completion, I could easily kill an ordinary peak half-step C of Soul Realm. Now that I've reached the peak, my physical strength is comparable to a peak 2nd level C of Soul Realm. If I use a lot of techniques, I can even compete with a 3rd level C of Soul Realm. Although this Zhuge Shogun Cave is only a trial, there are also countless opportunities. Tianyang chuckled, then stood up. Looking at the people around him, his eyes suddenly focused. Only a few dozen people had passed the 1st stage. Now, these people, except for Yi Qingyu, were still cultivating. As for Yi Qingyu, Tianyang's eyes narrowed slightly. He did not think that Yi Qingyu could not pass the 2nd stage. The only possibility was that he had given up on tempering his physical body and directly entered the 3rd stage. If that's the case, then I can't fall too far behind. Tianyang chuckled. Then his figure flashed and entered the spatial door to the 3rd stage that he had prepared beforehand. Only when Tianyang's figure disappeared did some people wake up. They looked at Tianyang with lingering fear. The aura Tianyang displayed just now was just his physical strength, right? But why do I feel like I'm facing a 2nd level C of Soul Realm Senior? Could it be that Tianyang had another breakthrough just now? That person sucked in a breath of cold air and could not help but say. Hearing this, everyone secretly swallowed a mouthful of saliva. Tianyang was already so powerful that he was able to suppress the little demon King Yiqingyu. Now that he had made a breakthrough, didn't that mean that he would be able to defeat everyone present? This terrifying speed, Tianyang, who didn't know what the outside world thought of him, had already reached the third stage. The third stage was the final stage. Tianyang didn't know what the third stage was about. By being able to reach the third stage, you have proven that your ability to adapt to flames is extremely powerful. Thus, you are qualified to inherit my nirvana, divine flame art. The Zhukei Shogun's voice was heard again, but this time, it wasn't the emotionless voice, but the real Zhukei Shogun. Tianyang's expression focused slightly when he heard this. Nirvana, divine, flame technique. If it was a cultivation technique, then it would be fun. He had already cultivated the divine desolate sky spirit art, so it was impossible for him to cultivate other cultivation techniques. Didn't that mean that he had wasted his trip to the Zhukei Shogun cave? It seemed that when the Zhukei Shogun was recording, he had considered the doubts of the person who came and spoke. This Nirvana divine flame art is also known as the Nirvana secret technique. It is not a cultivation technique, but I have fused some of my own insights into it and transformed it into a cultivation technique. What you really need to cultivate is this Nirvana secret technique. The Nirvana secret technique can absorb the vitality of heaven and earth as long as there is a trace of fire left and reconstruct the body. If the Nirvana secret technique is cultivated to the large success stage, even if there is only a trace of the primordial spirit left, you can still be reborn from the ashes. The Zhukei Shogun said. Hearing this, Tianyang's eyes lit up. There was such a secret technique. Tianyang knew quite a few secret techniques, and the void-treading secret technique that he cultivated was one of them. Secret techniques had no ranks and were independent of cultivation techniques and martial techniques. It was not an exaggeration to say that they were a type of divine ability. Listening to the Zhukei Shogun's words, the Nirvana secret technique was not much weaker than the void-treading secret technique. After all, as long as one was hanging on to one's last breath, they could be reborn. A secret technique that could restore vitality was extremely powerful. If the Almighties, who were already old but unwilling to die, heard that the Nirvana secret technique existed in the great void mystery land, they would do everything they could to obtain it. With the Nirvana secret technique, it was equivalent to having a second life. However, it is extremely difficult to cultivate the Nirvana secret technique. Back then, it took me a full 3 years to get a glimpse of it. But you only have 1 month's time left. If you can't make any progress in your cultivation in a month, then you can just go home. The Zhukei Shogun said. Hearing this, Tianyang's heart skipped a beat. It had taken a powerful figure like the Zhukei Shogun 3 years to cultivate it successfully. Now, there was only a month left for them. Didn't that mean that the successor had to be much more talented than the Vermilion Bird Divine General in order for it to be possible? Considering that the Great Void Secret Realm would only be open for 3 months, all of this became thought-provoking. Let's cut the crap and start the inheritance now. The Zhukei Shogun snorted coldly. Then, a blazing flame appeared in front of Tianyang. The flame slowly expanded, and the record of the Nirvana secret technique appeared in it. Damn it, why is the Nirvana secret technique so difficult? At that moment, Yiqingyu, who had entered the third stage a few hours before Tianyang, stared fixedly at the flame in front of him and roared. His martial talent had been praised since he was young, and even a high-level martial technique like the Sky Demon Fist did not require much time for him to cultivate. In the end, even after sitting there for several hours, he still could not see the slightest hint of the Nirvana secret technique. If it was still like this after a month, then he would have no chance at the Vermilion Bird Divine General's cave. Even I, the young master of the Sky Demon cult, can't comprehend it, let alone Tianyang, who hails from a third-rate faction. When the time comes, both of us will die together," Yichengyu said coldly. Meanwhile, on the other side, Tianyang's expression did not change as he quietly stared at the flame in front of him. The nirvana power that had been hidden in the true dragon core within his body for a long time suddenly began to tremble. Tianyang's expression changed slightly as he looked inside himself. He saw that within the true dragon's elixir, the nirvana power that came from the nirvana spiritual pool at the Northern Wilderness Mystic Realm's 9 steps to heaven was expanding rapidly. It vaguely formed a connection with the nirvana secret technique before him. In the next instant, Tianyang felt that the obscure nirvana secret technique in front of him suddenly became clear. Countless incomprehensible ancient characters, operating methods, and activating veins were all displayed before Tianyang's eyes. This nirvana power can actually help me comprehend the nirvana secret technique. Tianyang's lips curled slightly as he laughed softly.